In the depths of our planet, beneath the shifting sands and forgotten ruins, lie secrets that have baffled mankind for centuries. Ancient artifacts, enigmatic structures, and lost civilizations, each one a thread in the vast, untold story of humanity's past. But what if some of these mysteries were never meant to be solved? What if, buried deep in the earth, we're still uncovering clues to something far greater than we can comprehend? For the next 3 hours, we'll explore the most bizarre archaeological mysteries that continue to defy explanation. So sit back, relax, and prepare to journey into the unknown. In the arid, windswept expanse of the Moroccan desert, a quiet mystery lies buried, waiting for those willing to listen. Near the edge of the Sahara, in the remote Tantan region, a seemingly simple object was unearthed, a small, unassuming figurine. Yet, this discovery would prove to be anything but ordinary. The Tantan figurine, now housed in the Moroccan National Museum, is a relic that has stirred the curiosity of archaeologists, historians, and theorists alike. At first glance, the figurine seems like something that could easily be overlooked. A small stone carving, no taller than a human hand, intricately shaped to resemble a human face. The features are sharp, angular, almost abstract. An enigmatic visage with no clear eyes, no nose, just a suggestion of human form. Its weathered surface is marked by lines and patterns, though no one truly knows what they signify. What is certain, however, is that this artifact dates back to a time long before recorded history. Radiocarbon dating places the Tantan figurine at around 300,000 years old. This would make it one of the oldest known examples of figurative art, predating even the earliest known evidence of Homo sapiens. To put this into perspective, this predates the rise of ancient civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Palestine by tens of thousands of years. The figurine seems to suggest that an entirely different form of early human, or perhaps pre-human, culture existed in this part of the world, one whose expression in art was sophisticated far beyond what we have previously believed. But if the figurine truly is that old, then how did its creators conceive of such a form? The standard narrative of human evolution suggests that Homo sapiens, with their advanced cognitive abilities, didn't emerge until much later. The Tantan figurine challenges this notion, presenting a puzzle. Was it crafted by early Homo sapiens, or by a precursor species with similar cognitive capabilities? Could this artifact be evidence of a forgotten civilization, one that existed long before the dawn of recorded history, or even before the rise of anatomically modern humans? The discovery of the Tantan figurine in Morocco is not just significant because of its age, but because of its location. Archaeologists had previously believed that early humans and their ancestors were confined to Africa's eastern and southern regions. Yet, this object was found far to the west, in an area once thought to be a barren wasteland. It raises questions about the migration patterns of ancient humans. What if these early ancestors had a much broader reach, extending across vast stretches of Africa and into other lands? Could they have left traces of their presence in unexpected places? Interestingly, there is no immediate evidence linking the Tantan figurine to any known culture. While it shares some stylistic similarities with other prehistoric works found in Africa and even further afield, its distinct features make it unique. It is unclear whether it was a religious idol, a tool for ritualistic practices, or something else entirely. Some have speculated that the figure could represent an early form of animism, or perhaps a symbolic representation of a supernatural being, offering a glimpse into the spiritual world of its creators. Others wonder if it could be an early representation of some kind of extraterrestrial figure, drawing parallels to later depictions of beings from the stars, though this theory remains far from the mainstream. As the years pass, the Tantan figurine continues to provoke more questions than answers. Was it crafted by the hands of our direct ancestors, or did it belong to another species of human, one whose story has been lost to time. What was its purpose? Was it simply art, or did it hold deeper meaning? Its age and the mystery surrounding its origin suggest that we may be dealing with an object from a time when the boundaries of human cognition and culture were still taking shape, a time when our ancestors were on the cusp of something monumental. Yet, for all the research and speculation, the truth remains elusive. The Tauntaun figurine stands as a testament to the depth of human history, a reminder that what we think we know about our origins may only be the beginning. As we continue to unearth more remnants of our past, it seems that the deeper we dig, the more questions arise, leaving us to wonder just how much of our early history has been forgotten or intentionally hidden from the world. The Tauntaun figurine speaks to us across millennia, its silent, inscrutable gaze offering no clear answers. And perhaps that's what makes it so compelling. In a world where so much is known, so much has been uncovered, this small, enigmatic artifact challenges us to rethink our understanding of human history. What other mysteries lie buried in the sands of time, waiting to be discovered? As we leave the windswept sands of Morocco behind, we now turn our attention to another part of the ancient world, one that, much like the Tauntaun figurine, holds secrets far older than most of us realize. We venture into the rugged hills of Palestine, where, in 1981, a discovery was made that would raise just as many questions as it answered. Buried within the rocky soil of Berekhat, a site nestled near the Golan Heights, archaeologists uncovered a small stone artifact. At first glance, it appeared to be little more than a weathered rock, shaped by the erosive forces of nature. But as they examined it closer, a remarkable feature emerged. The stone had been meticulously carved, its smooth contours and features suggesting the outline of a human face. This was no random rock. The Berekhat figurine, as it would come to be known, was unmistakably intentional. It was a work of human craftsmanship. The figurine stands at only about 4 inches tall, yet its impact on the world of archaeology has been monumental. Its simplicity is striking. There is no intricate detail, no elaborate clothing or adornment. But what it lacks in complexity, it makes up for in its striking resemblance to the human form. A round head, with a broad, slightly indented face, and what could be interpreted as a nose, eyes, and mouth. Despite its rough edges, there is a certain grace in the way it has been shaped, a deliberate attempt to represent the human face in a way that feels both primitive and profound. The age of the Berekhat figurine has long been a subject of debate. Radiocarbon dating places it around 250,000 years old, which would mean it predates the earliest known evidence of Homo sapiens by tens of thousands of years. This time frame, so far removed from our own, raises immediate questions. Could this figurine have been made by our direct ancestors, or by a species even more ancient, one whose story is lost to time? For context, the earliest anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, are thought to have emerged around 200,000 BC. So if this figurine is indeed that old, it could mean that another unknown species was responsible for it. Some have even proposed that this could be the work of Homo erectus, or another early human ancestor, species that were not thought to possess the cognitive abilities required for symbolic thought or artistic expression. But if this object is not the work of Homo sapiens, then what does it tell us about the intellectual and cultural abilities of early humans? Were these early humans capable of abstract thinking, of crafting objects with symbolic meaning, long before the rise of modern human society? To understand the full significance of the Berekhat figurine, we must also consider the context in which it was found. The Golan Heights, where the figurine was discovered, is an area rich with ancient history and human occupation, a place that has long been a crossroads of civilizations. The figurine itself was uncovered in a layer of earth that contained evidence of early stone tools, suggesting that it was created by a group of humans, or proto-humans, who had already developed some form of technology. However, there was no other evidence of an organized culture, no settlement or elaborate burial rituals, just this one solitary object. Theories about the figurine's purpose are equally varied and speculative. Some scholars suggest that it was a representation of a deity, perhaps a fertility figure, or a symbol of some kind of primitive religion. Others believe that it could have served as a tool for communication, a kind of early writing, or a way to convey a shared cultural or spiritual message. In this sense, it may not have been just a work of art, but a symbol, a means of connecting people with one another and with a higher power. Yet, the figurine's purpose remains shrouded in mystery. Was it created as part of a ritual? Was it a token of some sort of early belief system, one that predated written language by millennia? Or could it have been a simple personal object, an early attempt at self-expression, a human's way of capturing a moment, a face, a memory in stone? In a way, the figurine might be seen as a kind of message from a distant past, offering us a glimpse into a world long gone. And yet, its meaning seems to slip through our fingers like sand, no matter how much we analyze it or try to impose our modern understanding on it. What we do know is that it stands as one of the earliest examples of human or proto-human art, and its very existence raises the question of how much more is hidden in the annals of prehistory. But even more intriguing than its age and craftsmanship is the mystery of its creator. Who were the people who made the Berekhat figurine? Were they members of a lost civilization, long forgotten by history? Or were they individuals who simply left behind this small piece of stone to remind us that our ancestors were not as distant as we sometimes think? The figurine may not answer those questions, but it serves as a reminder that the boundaries of human understanding are constantly shifting. What we believe to be the limits of early human capability may, in fact, be far from the truth. As we consider the questions surrounding the Berekhat figurine, one cannot help but wonder, how many other objects like it remain hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered? What other pieces of our shared history have been lost to time? The figurine stands as a silent testament to the complexities of our origins, urging us to look deeper into the past and reconsider the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and where we come from. The answers, it seems, are still out there, buried in the dust of ancient landscapes, waiting for the day when they will reveal themselves. So, as we continue this journey through time, the Berekhat figurine reminds us of the deep, enigmatic connection between the past and the present, one that is still, for now, out of reach. And perhaps, just like the Tantan figurine, its full meaning will only emerge when we're ready to understand the vast, untold story of our earliest ancestors. As we leave behind the windswept hills of Palestine, the next stop on our journey takes us to the rugged shores of Greece, a land steeped in ancient myths, where history and mystery are often intertwined. It is here, on a quiet, pebble-strewn beach near the village of Kafkania, that a discovery was made, one that would provoke the same questions as the enigmatic figurines we've already explored. The Kafkania pebble, a small yet profoundly perplexing object, was found in 2001 by a local fisherman whose attention was drawn to its curious shape amidst the smooth stones along the shore. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary pebble, round, weathered, and shaped by the relentless forces of the sea. But as he picked it up, something extraordinary became apparent. The stone had been carved, deliberately, with precision, and in a way that defied the natural processes of erosion. It was not just a rock shaped by nature's hand, but an object intentionally crafted by some ancient force. At roughly 2.5 inches in diameter, the pebble is small, but its surface is marked by distinct grooves and markings that appear to form geometric patterns. The most striking feature, however, is the clear indentation in the center, which some believe could represent an early attempt at creating a symbolic or functional design. The craftsmanship is so distinct that it is hard to attribute it to anything other than a deliberate act of creation, an artist's hand, even if that hand belonged to someone who lived thousands of years ago. Initial examinations suggest that the Kafkania pebble dates back to around 130,000 BC, an astonishingly early period. This places it within the time frame of early human ancestors, Homo erectus, or perhaps even earlier hominins who were beginning to develop the rudimentary tools and expressions that would eventually lead to the cultural blossoming of Homo sapiens. But what exactly was the pebble used for? Was it a tool, a decoration, or something more mysterious? At first, many dismissed it as an example of natural formation, perhaps a rock that had simply worn down into a shape that resembled something deliberate. But as further analysis was conducted, it became clear that the wear patterns on the pebble were not consistent with the forces of nature alone. The grooves, in particular, seemed far too symmetrical and intentional. What we were left with then was an object whose purpose was not entirely understood, a piece of prehistoric art, a tool for some forgotten ritual, or perhaps a representation of something beyond what we can comprehend today. The mainstream academic consensus tends to lean toward the idea that the Kafkania pebble is the product of a natural process, albeit one that coincidentally resulted in a shape that could be mistaken for human craftsmanship. This explanation, while plausible, fails to account for the apparent deliberate design of the object. Could it be that the pebble was simply shaped by the erosion of the sea, creating natural indentations that coincidentally formed geometric patterns? Or does the stone represent an early attempt by prehistoric humans, or even an earlier species, to craft something imbued with symbolic meaning? One of the more speculative theories surrounding the pebble posits that it may be the earliest known example of a symbolic object. Some suggest that the markings could represent an early form of writing, a precursor to the sophisticated alphabets and symbols that would eventually emerge in later civilizations. Could the grooves in the stone be a form of proto-writing? Symbols meant to communicate something, perhaps about the natural world or the cosmos? If this theory holds even a hint of truth, it would mean that early humans were capable of abstract thought and communication much earlier than we have ever imagined. Other theorists propose that the Kafkania pebble might have had a ritualistic or spiritual significance. It could have been a talisman, used by early humans in ceremonies meant to connect them with the natural forces that shaped their world. The indentation in the center might have been seen as a focal point for meditation, or perhaps a symbolic representation of the sun, the moon, or another celestial body. Could the pebble have been a primitive tool of divination, an object used to interpret omens or communicate with the divine? The mysterious nature of the Kafkania pebble has led some to consider even more far-reaching possibilities. Could it be the work of a species far older than Homo sapiens? Some have even speculated that it might be an artifact left behind by extraterrestrial visitors, suggesting that ancient civilizations, or beings from other worlds, may have once walked the earth long before the rise of humanity as we know it. This theory, while far from accepted by mainstream archaeology, reflects the deep sense of wonder and curiosity that the pebble evokes. How could something so simple, just a small stone, carry with it the weight of such profound questions? Yet, for all the theories, the true purpose of the Kafkania pebble remains an enigma. There are no clear answers, only more questions that continue to elude us. The pebble, like so many objects from the distant past, challenges our understanding of early human development, forcing us to reconsider what we know about the capabilities and consciousness of our ancient ancestors. Was it an artifact of early communication, art, or spirituality? Or was it simply a tool, shaped by an unknown hand for an unknown purpose? As we continue to explore the mysteries of our ancient past, we are left to wonder how many other objects like the Kafkania Pebble lie hidden in the earth, waiting to be discovered. What else might be out there, hidden in plain sight, that could rewrite the story of humanity's origins? And perhaps, more importantly, what else from the distant past has yet to be uncovered, waiting for the day when we will finally make sense of it all? The Kafkania Pebble reminds us that even the simplest objects can hold profound mysteries. It calls us to look closer, to question more deeply, and to wonder how much of our past remains beyond the reach of our understanding. With every stone turned, every relic unearthed, the story of who we are and where we come from continues to unfold piece by fragmentary piece. As we leave behind the curious shores of Kafkania, with its mysterious pebble that seems to defy all natural explanations, we now turn our gaze once more toward the ancient lands of Greece. This time, we move inland to the tranquil shores of Lake Prespa, nestled between the borders of Greece, Albania, and North Macedonia. In this seemingly peaceful landscape, amidst the quiet whispers of the wind and the murmur of the lake's waters, a remarkable discovery was made that would once again challenge our understanding of ancient civilization. It is here, in 1993, that the Dispilio tablet was uncovered, an object that has caused scholars and archaeologists to reconsider not just the origins of writing, but the very fabric of early human society itself. The Dispilio tablet is a small, roughly rectangular slab of clay, measuring just 15.5 by 10.5 centimeters, but its significance is immense. The tablet, thought to date back to around 5,300 BC, is inscribed with a series of symbols, marks, or characters that have led some researchers to suggest that it might be the earliest known example of written language in Europe. Found in the ancient settlement of Dispilio, near Lake Prespa, the tablet's discovery sent ripples through the archaeological community. At first glance, its markings appear simple, arranged in rows, perhaps akin to a primitive form of writing or even an early form of pictography. But as researchers began to study the inscriptions, the mystery deepened. Unlike other examples of ancient writing systems, the characters on the Dispilio tablet do not appear to correspond to any known language or script. No matching system of symbols has yet been found, either in the surrounding area or in other parts of the ancient world. So, what are we left with? An object that could be one of the earliest attempts at communication, a mysterious artifact that hints at a society far more complex and sophisticated than we might have ever imagined. To understand the significance of the Dispilio tablet, we must first look at the context in which it was found. The settlement at Dispilio itself is a fascinating discovery, an ancient lakeside village thought to be built around 5000 BC that was once home to a community of Neolithic people. Archaeological evidence suggests that these early inhabitants were advanced for their time, possessing a range of skills from pottery making to agriculture. The discovery of the tablet, along with a variety of other artifacts, paints a picture of a society that was not merely surviving, but thriving, with a level of complexity that suggests a deeper social and cultural structure than previously thought for such an early period in human history. The question then arises, why was the Dispilio tablet created, and what do its markings mean? Some scholars have proposed that it could represent a rudimentary form of writing, perhaps an early record-keeping system, or a way to record transactions, as writing would later be used for in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Others suggest that it could be a form of ritual or religious expression, possibly a symbolic or ceremonial object rather than a practical tool for communication. Given that the markings on the tablet are quite abstract, they may not represent words in the way we understand them today. Could they be an early form of ideograms or a kind of proto-writing, capturing abstract concepts or ideas that were important to the people of Dispilio? Perhaps these marks represent an attempt to encode the people's thoughts, beliefs, or even their connection to the natural world in ways that we have yet to fully understand. However, the mystery deepens even further when we consider the lack of similar inscriptions in the surrounding region. Unlike other ancient writing systems, which gradually spread and evolved over time, becoming more refined as they were passed from one culture to another, the symbols on the Dispilio tablet have no clear lineage or descendants. This suggests that whatever the markings on the tablet represent, they were used by a distinct, isolated group of people who may have developed their own system of symbols independent of the broader currents of civilization. Could this be evidence of a forgotten or lost culture, a group of people who were developing their own form of communication long before the rise of written languages in Mesopotamia or Egypt? Some have speculated that the tablet may represent a link to a broader, even more mysterious phenomenon, a network of early cultures, all experimenting with writing and symbolism in their own unique ways, but whose connections to each other and to later civilizations were never fully realized. What if the Dispilio tablet was part of a much older, more widespread tradition of symbolic thought, one that spread across Europe and the Near East, only to fade away as time passed and civilizations rose and fell? Another theory, though more speculative, suggests that the tablet could be a kind of artifact from a lost civilization, a group of people whose achievements were so advanced that they left behind traces of their knowledge, but whose culture disappeared without a trace. Could the tablet represent the remnants of a society that existed long before the dawn of known history? If the Dispilio tablet truly is an early form of writing, then it would suggest that human societies in the Neolithic period were far more sophisticated than we typically imagine. What else might they have accomplished that has been lost to time? But there are even more fringe theories that invite us to think beyond the confines of known history. Could the Dispilio tablet, with its enigmatic symbols, be evidence of an ancient contact with extraterrestrial beings? It's an idea that, while far from mainstream, has persisted throughout history, an enduring fascination with the possibility that advanced civilizations from other worlds may have visited Earth long before the rise of modern humanity. Could the strange, abstract symbols on the tablet represent communication from a source beyond our planet? While this theory may seem fantastical, it speaks to the deeper mystery that the Dispilio tablet evokes, one that stretches the limits of our understanding of human history and pushes us to consider the unknown. What if this small, seemingly unremarkable object is not just a symbol of an early human culture, but a piece of a much larger puzzle, one that we have yet to fully solve? Despite the extensive research and ongoing analysis, the Dispilio tablet remains an enigma. Its purpose, meaning, and place in history continue to elude us, and as such, it stands as a testament to the complexity of human civilization's origins. Whether it was a tool for writing, a religious object, or something altogether different, it challenges us to rethink our assumptions about early human societies. It asks us to consider that the history we think we know might only be a small fraction of the true story, a story that may still be waiting to be uncovered. In the end, the mystery of the Dispilio tablet is not one that will be easily solved. As we continue to search for answers, we are left to wonder, how much of our past remains hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed? What other traces of forgotten civilizations lie buried in the soil, waiting for the right moment to be discovered? And, perhaps most intriguingly, how many more objects like the Dispilio tablet exist? Small, enigmatic fragments of a world long lost to time, but still capable of revealing something remarkable about the people who once called this planet home? As we leave behind the shores of Lake Prespa and the elusive mystery of the Dispilio tablet, we now turn our attention to the Eastern Balkans, where another strange and unexplained artifact has captivated the curiosity of archaeologists and historians alike. In the heart of Bulgaria, a country rich with ancient history, a discovery was made that has remained shrouded in mystery for decades. The Sitovo inscription, etched into a rock near the village of Sitovo, is a relic that raises more questions than answers, offering a tantalizing glimpse into a forgotten past. The Sitovo inscription was discovered in 2001 by a local researcher who was drawn to the rock due to its unusual markings. At first glance, the inscription appears to be nothing more than a series of lines, symbols, and abstract patterns, carved deeply into the surface of a large stone. It is not a typical form of writing, nor does it resemble any known alphabet or script. The symbols are both geometric and curvilinear, some of them suggesting stylized representations of human or animal forms, while others seem to follow an intricate, almost mathematical design. The stone itself is weathered, its surface roughened by centuries of exposure to the elements. And yet, despite the passage of time, the markings remain visible, their sharp lines standing out against the worn surface. What stands out most about the Sitovo inscription is its context. It was found in a region that, while rich in prehistoric and ancient history, had not previously yielded any such examples of writing or symbolic markings. The location, near the foothills of the Balkan Mountains, is an area that was inhabited by early cultures dating back thousands of years, yet no other examples of similar inscriptions have been found nearby. The age of the Sitovo inscription is difficult to pinpoint precisely, but it is generally thought to date back to around 5000 BC, possibly even earlier. This places it squarely in the Neolithic period, a time when human societies were beginning to transition from a nomadic existence to settled agricultural communities. What makes this date so remarkable is that it would place the Sitovo inscription at a time when the earliest forms of writing had not yet been established in other parts of the world. The Sumerians, who are credited with developing one of the first true writing systems, would not emerge until centuries later. So, if the Sitovo inscription is indeed as old as believed, it could represent one of the earliest attempts at written communication in human history. Or perhaps it could be something entirely different. The main theory surrounding the Sitovo inscription is that it represents an early form of writing, an attempt by a Neolithic people to record information or convey ideas. However, there is no direct evidence to support this hypothesis. Unlike later scripts, such as cuneiform or hieroglyphics, the symbols on the Sitovo inscription do not appear to form coherent patterns or sequences that could be interpreted as words or sentences. Instead, they appear to be individual marks or abstract representations, with no clear connection to a recognizable language or script. Could this be a case of early humans experimenting with symbolism, trying to develop a system of communication through abstract forms? Or is it possible that these symbols represent something far more complex, an early code, perhaps, that we have yet to decipher? Some scholars suggest that the Sitovo inscription could be the work of a shamanistic or ritualistic culture, using symbolic markings as part of religious ceremonies or spiritual practices. The region where the inscription was found has long been known for its ancient burial mounds and ritual sites, suggesting that the people who lived here may have had a complex belief system, one that involved the use of symbols and markings to communicate with the divine or to encode esoteric knowledge. Could the Sitovo inscription have been created for such a purpose, as part of a ritual to invoke the gods, mark a special event, or encode a sacred message? Others have proposed a more speculative theory, that the Sitovo inscription could be the work of a lost civilization, one that predates all known cultures. Could this be evidence of an advanced society, one that had developed a form of writing and symbolic expression long before the rise of Sumerian and Egyptian civilizations? Some have even suggested that the inscription might represent a form of communication with extraterrestrial beings, an idea that, though speculative, has captured the imaginations of many. If this theory holds any merit, it would suggest that early humans had access to knowledge or technologies that are not accounted for in the archaeological record. This idea, while intriguing, remains highly controversial and far from accepted in mainstream archaeology. As with many ancient inscriptions, there are other more grounded possibilities that have been proposed. Some believe that the Sitovo inscription could be a form of early proto-writing, a precursor to the true alphabets and scripts that would emerge millennia later. In this view, the symbols are seen as the first steps toward the development of language, a way of recording information, even if the symbols themselves were not immediately comprehensible. Perhaps they were simply a means to represent objects, ideas, or events, an early attempt at capturing the world in a way that could be passed down through generations. But if this is the case, then why have no other examples of similar writing been found in the region? The Balkans, while home to many important archaeological sites, have not yielded any other examples of such early inscriptions, leaving the Sitovo inscription as an isolated enigma. Could it be the work of a single individual, or a small group of people, who were experimenting with the concept of written communication? Or does the lack of similar artifacts point to the possibility that this was something unique, a product of a fleeting cultural moment that was lost to history? One of the most intriguing aspects of the Sitovo inscription is the sense of mystery that surrounds it. Despite years of study, the true meaning and purpose of the symbols remain unclear. No clear translation has emerged, and no definitive answer has been found regarding the origin of the inscription. And yet, it continues to captivate those who encounter it. It is a reminder that even in our increasingly connected and documented world, there are still fragments of the past that elude our understanding. The inscription on that rock, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, challenges us to think beyond the limits of what we know, to consider the possibility that there is still much about our distant ancestors and their communication, culture, and beliefs that remains hidden. As we continue to explore these mysteries, we are left with the question that seems to echo through every enigma we encounter. What else lies out there, waiting to be discovered? What other inscriptions, symbols, or artifacts are buried beneath the earth, awaiting the right moment to reveal their secrets? The Sitovo inscription, with its tantalizing mystery, stands as a testament to the complexity of human history and the untold stories that still lie beneath our feet. And as we dig deeper into the past, it seems certain that more such mysteries will continue to emerge, each one inviting us to question what we know and what we still have yet to uncover. As we leave behind the enigmatic symbols of the Sitovo inscription, we now journey to the heart of the Levant, where the sands of time have hidden yet another mystery waiting to be unearthed. Here, in the rugged landscape of Jordan, near the modern city of Amman, a discovery was made that would both confound and fascinate archaeologists, one that would stretch the boundaries of our understanding of ancient culture and art. This discovery, known as the Ghazal plaster statues, remains one of the most perplexing and awe-inspiring finds of the Neolithic era. The Ghazal statues were uncovered in the early 1980s, during an excavation at a site near the village of Ghazal. This area, which has long been inhabited by human societies, revealed a trove of ancient remains, including a series of life-sized statues crafted from plaster and painted with vivid colors. The statues, which were found buried under the earth, are remarkable not only for their craftsmanship, but for their sheer scale and the sophistication of the techniques used to create them. These figures, most of which are believed to date back to around 7000 BC, stand as silent sentinels to a forgotten world, one whose inhabitants possessed artistic skills and cultural practices far beyond what we might expect from a Neolithic society. The statues themselves are made from a combination of plaster, lime, and a mixture of other natural materials. They were meticulously crafted to represent the human form, with finely sculpted faces and bodies. Some of the figures are nearly life-sized, while others are smaller, perhaps representing individuals of varying ages or roles within the community. The details of the faces, eyes, noses, and mouths are so finely rendered that it is easy to imagine these figures as representations of real people, crafted with the intention of preserving their likeness or spirit. What is most striking about the Ayn Ghazal statues, however, is their sheer scale and the amount of effort that must have gone into their creation. These were not simple figurines or crude representations of the human form. They were statues that required a high degree of craftsmanship and an understanding of proportions and human anatomy. The plaster was carefully applied over a core of woven reed or similar material, and the figures were painted in bright colors, with traces of red, white, and black pigments still visible on some of the surviving pieces. These were not static objects. They were objects of significance, embedded with meaning far beyond their physical presence. As remarkable as the Ayn Ghazal statues are for their artistic qualities, it is the mystery of their purpose that has long intrigued researchers. Why were these life-sized figures created in the first place? What role did they play in the society that produced them? Were they objects of religious or spiritual significance, perhaps representing gods, ancestors, or spirits? Or were they part of a more practical function, perhaps used in rituals or ceremonies designed to ensure fertility, harvests, or protection for the community? The most commonly accepted theory is that the statues were linked to some form of religious or spiritual practice. The Neolithic people of Ayn Ghazal, like many early human societies, likely had complex belief systems that included a deep connection to the natural world, ancestral worship, and the supernatural. The statues may have been crafted to honor ancestors, representing their likenesses or perhaps their spirits, in the belief that they could offer protection or guidance to the living. Some researchers suggest that the figures were intended as symbols of fertility, a common theme in many ancient cultures, and that they might have been used in rituals designed to ensure the continuation of life, both human and agricultural. Their life-sized scale and the effort put into their creation certainly suggest that they were meant to be central to some form of ritual or ceremonial purpose. But what makes the Ayn Ghazal statues truly perplexing is the lack of definitive evidence about their exact purpose. While the religious or spiritual theories are compelling, no conclusive proof exists to definitively support any one explanation. The statues do not appear to have been used as idols in the traditional sense. They were not housed in shrines or temples, as would later be the case with many ancient cultures. Instead, they were found in the homes of the people who created them, suggesting that they may have served a more intimate, personal role. Were they representations of family ancestors, kept as objects of reverence and protection in the home? Or could they have been used in private rituals, perhaps in connection with burial practices or rites of passage? Another theory, more speculative in nature, suggests that the Ayn Ghazal statues could be evidence of a form of early social stratification. Could these figures have represented different social or political roles within the community, perhaps leaders, healers, or shamans? The distinct differences in the size and design of the statues, some are more elaborately crafted than others, might hint at a hierarchy within the society that produced them. This theory would suggest that the statues were not just religious objects, but symbols of power and authority, with some individuals or families using them as a means to assert their status within the community. As with many ancient mysteries, the truth remains elusive. No written records exist to explain the purpose of the Ayn Ghazal statues, and the people who created them left behind no direct clues. The statues stand as silent witnesses to a past long forgotten, their meanings and uses buried beneath centuries of sand and time. Still, they remain as one of the most significant discoveries of the Neolithic period, challenging our assumptions about the artistic, spiritual, and social complexity of early human societies. What makes the mystery of the Ayn Ghazal statues even more intriguing is the fact that they were not an isolated phenomenon. Similar statues and figurines have been found at other Neolithic sites across the Levant, indicating that the creation of such images may have been part of a broader cultural tradition. Could these statues, scattered across different sites, represent a shared belief system or artistic style that connected disparate groups of early humans? Were they part of a larger, more widespread movement of spiritual or cultural expression that we are only now beginning to understand? And yet, despite these tantalizing possibilities, there are still many questions that remain unanswered. Why did the people of Ain Ghazal choose to create these figures in the first place? What drove them to invest so much time and effort into crafting life-sized statues from plaster, when their needs for survival and sustenance were likely their primary concerns? The mystery of the Ain Ghazal statues challenges us to think about the nature of early human societies, how they thought, how they expressed themselves, and how they understood the world around them. The figures stand as a testament to the creative spirit of the Neolithic people, a reminder that even in the distant past, humans were capable of extraordinary achievements in art and culture. But more than that, the statues invite us to ask, what else might we be missing from our understanding of the past? What other pieces of evidence, hidden beneath the surface, might tell us more about these early cultures and their beliefs? And perhaps, just as with the Ain Ghazal statues, there are still mysteries waiting to be uncovered, objects of great significance that remain out of reach, waiting for the right moment to reveal their secrets. As we continue our exploration of the bizarre and unexplained, the Ain Ghazal statues stand as one of the most compelling reminders that the past is never fully understood, and that our journey into the depths of history may still have many secrets to unveil. After leaving behind the hauntingly beautiful plaster statues of Ain Ghazal, we now journey further into the arid landscape of Jordan, where the earth holds another secret, a mystery waiting to be uncovered. Situated in the rocky, desolate hills of southern Jordan, near the ancient village of Baja, an extraordinary discovery was made, a cache of human skulls buried beneath the earth. This find, known as the Baja Skull Cache, has captivated archaeologists and researchers alike, sparking debate over its meaning, its purpose, and the society that might have created it. The site, uncovered in the late 1990s, revealed a collection of skulls, many of them deliberately buried in a manner that seemed to suggest intentionality. These skulls, thought to date back to around 7,500 BC, belong to the Neolithic period, a time when early human societies were transitioning from a nomadic existence to settled agricultural communities. The fact that these skulls were found in a deliberately arranged cache raises intriguing questions about the practices and beliefs of the people who created them. The Baja Skull Cache consists of numerous skulls, many of which were placed in a specific arrangement. Some were found stacked upon one another, while others were buried in shallow graves. What stands out most about this find is the careful, purposeful way in which the skulls were placed. This was not a random collection of bones, but rather a burial practice that suggests a deeper meaning. The people who buried the skulls were not simply disposing of the dead, they were engaging in a ritual of some sort, and the arrangement of the skulls seems to imply that the people who created the cache had a particular intent in mind. The most striking feature of the Baja Skull Cache is the fact that many of the skulls were not complete. Instead, they had been carefully severed at the neck, with some of the skulls missing parts of the face or the jaw. This has led some researchers to propose that these skulls were not meant to represent whole individuals, but rather the heads or remains of individuals that had been specifically chosen for some ritual purpose. It raises the possibility that the people of Baja were practicing ancestor worship, or perhaps engaging in some form of symbolic representation of the dead. Could the skulls have been preserved and kept as relics of revered ancestors? Or perhaps they were used in a form of ancestor cult, where the heads of the deceased were treated as sacred objects, imbued with spiritual significance. The Neolithic people of the region, like many early societies, may have believed that the spirits of the dead could offer protection or guidance to the living, and the careful handling of the skulls might have been a way of invoking the ancestors' power. Another intriguing theory revolves around the idea that the skulls may have had a more practical or societal function. Some scholars suggest that the skulls were part of a form of social or political ritual, perhaps a way of marking important individuals within the community or distinguishing between various social classes. If the skulls were arranged in a particular order or pattern, they could represent some form of hierarchy or status. Were these skulls the remains of important individuals, leaders, healers, or warriors, whose heads were preserved to serve as symbols of power, strength, or knowledge? But there are even more speculative ideas that have been proposed to explain the Baja skull cache. Some researchers have suggested that the skulls could be evidence of a more violent or traumatic practice, perhaps related to human sacrifice. The fact that the skulls were carefully severed at the neck and buried in a ritualistic manner has led some to hypothesize that these remains might have been the result of ritual killing. Could the skulls be remnants of an ancient practice of sacrifice, meant to appease the gods or secure the favor of the divine? Were these people engaging in acts of devotion or fear, believing that offering human remains would bring prosperity or protection to their community? The arrangement of the skulls is another point of intrigue. While some scholars argue that they were simply buried in a ritualistic manner, others suggest that the positioning of the skulls, whether in clusters, rows, or piles, could represent a symbolic or ceremonial practice. Could the placement of the skulls reflect a specific ritual or cosmological belief, a way of representing the relationship between life and death, or between the living and the deceased? The mystery deepens further when we consider the absence of similar finds in the region. Despite being located in an area rich in Neolithic settlements, the Baja skull cache stands out as a singular discovery, with no other known sites of similar burial practices in the immediate area. Why was this particular cache of skulls created in this way? Could it have been a localized practice, unique to the people of Baja, or did it represent a wider cultural or religious tradition that has left no trace in other parts of the region? There are those who have even speculated that the Baja skull cache could represent evidence of a lost or forgotten civilization, one whose practices were so unique that they have left behind only these fragments for us to interpret. Could this find be a glimpse into a society whose rituals and customs were far removed from the societies that would later dominate the region, such as the Mesopotamians or the Egyptians? What if these Neolithic people possessed a complex belief system, one that has been erased from history by time and the erosion of cultural memory? And, as with many archaeological discoveries, there are more fringe theories that have emerged, particularly surrounding the nature of the skulls themselves. Could these skulls have been altered in some way, perhaps artificially elongated or modified by the people of Baja for some cultural or ritualistic reason? Some researchers have proposed that the skulls might be evidence of an early form of cranial deformation, a practice seen in other ancient cultures around the world. Could the severing of the neck and the alteration of the skulls have been part of a larger social or religious custom? Despite the many theories and possibilities, the Baja skull cache remains a mystery, one that continues to elude definitive explanation. As with many discoveries from the distant past, the true meaning behind the skulls is likely to remain hidden, buried beneath layers of time and earth. What remains clear is that the people of Baja, like many early societies, had a complex and deeply symbolic relationship with death, the afterlife, and the human body. The careful placement of the skulls suggests a society that viewed the dead with reverence, using the skulls not just as remnants of the past, but as potent symbols of the world beyond. As we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, the Baja skull cache reminds us that there are still many questions left to answer. What were these people trying to communicate through their burial practices? Were they seeking to honor their ancestors, reinforce their social structure, or appease the forces of nature? What can we learn from this singular find about the beliefs, customs, and practices of a culture whose voice has been lost to time? As we peel back the layers of history, we are left to wonder, how many more mysteries like this lie hidden in the earth, waiting for us to uncover their secrets? As we leave behind the cryptic and unsettling mysteries of the Baja skull cache, we now venture deep into the heart of the Egyptian desert, to a site that has long baffled researchers and archaeologists alike. Here, at the remote and isolated location of Nabta Playa, a series of ancient stone formations stand as silent witnesses to a forgotten civilization, one that predated even the Great Pyramids of Giza. Among these stones, the most intriguing and enigmatic are the Nabta Playa calendar circle peripheral stones, a structure that has captivated the imaginations of those who seek to understand the origins of astronomy, religion, and human ingenuity. Nabta Playa, situated about 100 kilometers south of the Nile River, is not the typical archaeological site that one might associate with ancient Egypt. Unlike the towering temples of Luxor or the grand pyramids of Giza, Nabta Playa is located in the vast, barren expanses of the southern Egyptian desert. Here, amidst the scattered remains of what may have once been a thriving ceremonial center, lie large, megalithic stone structures, some standing upright, others lying on the ground, weathered by centuries of wind and sand. These formations are not just random piles of rocks, but highly deliberate arrangements, crafted with precision and purpose. Among the most remarkable of these formations is the Nabta Playa calendar circle, a complex arrangement of large stone blocks, some of which have been positioned with striking alignment to the sun and stars. This stone circle, thought to date back to around 4500 BC, is widely regarded as one of the earliest known astronomical observatories in the world, predating Stonehenge by over a millennium. The structure itself consists of several standing stones, some arranged in a circular formation, while others form a more irregular pattern that seems to correspond to celestial events, particularly the movement of the sun and the stars across the desert sky. At the center of the Nabta Playa calendar circle, one can find a series of smaller, carefully placed stones, which are thought to represent markers for specific astronomical events. These include the solstices and equinoxes, times when the position of the sun in the sky marks significant moments in the solar year. The stones themselves are arranged so that, during key times of the year, the sun would rise or set in alignment with the markers, indicating that the people of Nabta Playa had a sophisticated understanding of the cycles of the earth and sky. The surrounding peripheral stones are of particular interest. These stones form an incomplete circle around the main calendar formation, and it is thought that they may have played a key role in marking other important celestial events. The exact purpose of the peripheral stones remains unclear, but it is possible that they were part of a larger ritualistic or ceremonial function, perhaps marking the path of the stars, the movement of the moon, or other cosmic phenomena that held significance for the people of the region. Some researchers have even speculated that the peripheral stones could have been used as part of an early form of navigation, providing a guide for travelers in the vast and featureless desert. What makes the Nabta Playa calendar circle peripheral stones particularly compelling is the fact that, despite their obvious precision, there is little known about the culture that created them. Unlike other ancient cultures, such as the Egyptians or Sumerians, there are no written records or clear evidence linking the people of Nabta Playa to any known civilization. The people who built this structure left behind no inscriptions, no monumental architecture, and no definitive traces of their existence beyond these stone markers. In fact, the purpose of Nabta Playa itself is still a matter of intense debate. Was it a center for religious or astronomical rites, a place of communal gathering, or something else entirely? Some scholars suggest that the people of Nabta Playa may have been early desert dwellers, living in an environment that was much more hospitable than it is today. Thousands of years ago, the climate in this region may have been far wetter, with lakes and rivers that supported a much larger population. In this context, the stone circle might have functioned as a center for agricultural rituals, marking the changing of the seasons and the cycles of planting and harvesting. The alignment of the stones with the sun and stars could have been a way for the people of Nabta Playa to track the seasons and ensure that they planted and harvested their crops at the right time. Another theory, more speculative in nature, suggests that Nabta Playa may have been an early form of a universal observatory, built by a society that sought to understand the cosmos. The intricate alignments of the stones, their placement in relation to the sun, and the potential lunar and stellar connections all point to a society with a deep understanding of astronomy, perhaps one that predates the astronomical knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. Could the people who created Nabta Playa have been among the first to map the movements of the stars and planets? Were they attempting to chart the heavens in a way that would later influence the religious and spiritual beliefs of the ancient Egyptians? The most tantalizing possibility, however, is that the Nabta Playa calendar circle represents something far more complex, perhaps even a lost tradition of celestial worship that predated the rise of formal Egyptian religious practices. The alignment of the stones with celestial bodies suggests that the people of Nabta Playa held a deep reverence for the heavens, and their rituals may have been centered around the belief that the cosmos played an active role in shaping human life. In this way, the stone circle might have served as a kind of cosmic temple, an architectural manifestation of the human desire to connect with the divine forces that governed the universe. Yet, for all the possibilities, many questions about the site remain unanswered. The lack of written records, combined with the scarcity of other evidence from the period, leaves researchers grappling with uncertainty. What exactly was the purpose of the peripheral stones? Were they connected to rituals of a specific nature? Or did they represent a more universal understanding of the cosmos? Why was the site abandoned? And what happened to the people who created it? The mystery surrounding Nabta Playa raises even larger questions about the early development of human societies. What other early sites, hidden beneath the desert sands or beneath layers of history, might contain similar celestial knowledge or architectural wonders? Could the people of Nabta Playa have been part of a larger, now forgotten cultural tradition, one that linked desert societies across vast regions through shared astronomical knowledge? As we stand before the silent stones of Nabta Playa, we are reminded of the vast stretches of history that remain unrecorded and unknown. In a world where much of the ancient past has been lost to time, the Nabta Playa calendar circle peripheral stones stand as an enduring testament to the complexity and ingenuity of our distant ancestors. And as we continue to search for answers, we are left to ponder. How many more mysteries, hidden in plain sight, remain just beyond our understanding, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to dig deeper into the unknown? As we leave behind the celestial alignments of Nabta Playa and the mysterious desert stones, we now journey to the banks of the Danube River, where a different enigma waits to be unraveled. Nestled along the rugged cliffs of Serbia lies the archaeological site of Lepenski Vir, a place where ancient stone carvings, etched into boulders, have intrigued researchers for decades. These carvings, known as the Lepenski Vir boulder carvings, offer a glimpse into the minds of a prehistoric people who lived thousands of years ago, yet their exact meaning remains as elusive as the river that flows silently past them. Lepenski Vir itself is an extraordinary site. Thought to have been inhabited around 9,500 BC to 6,000 BC, it represents one of the earliest known urban settlements in Europe. The site, located on the shores of the Iron Gate Gorge on the Danube, was home to a sophisticated society of hunter-gatherers who lived in well-planned, semi-permanent dwellings made of stone. But it is not just the architecture that has captured the attention of archaeologists and historians. It is the boulders themselves, massive, imposing rocks adorned with mysterious carvings, whose meaning has sparked heated debates and speculation. The boulders at Lepenski Vir are not merely decorative. Each one is carved with intricate patterns, figures, and symbols, many of which are deeply stylized representations of human faces and bodies. The carvings are thought to be both artistic and symbolic, perhaps reflecting the belief systems or religious practices of the people who created them. Some of the figures appear to be human-like, with large almond-shaped eyes, while others are more abstract, consisting of geometric patterns or stylized forms. The level of detail in the carvings suggests a significant investment of time and effort. These were not haphazard designs, but deliberate attempts to communicate something deeper. What is most striking about the Lepenski Vir boulder carvings is their apparent uniformity. The carvings are spread across several boulders, and many of the figures share similar features, particularly the large, expressive eyes that dominate the faces. Some of the figures appear to be seated or in a reclining position, while others stand upright, their postures frozen in time. This consistency in style and form raises an important question. Were these figures representations of actual individuals, or were they symbolic representations of gods, spirits, or ancestors? Could the carvings be related to the worship of natural forces, such as the sun, the river, or the earth? One of the most compelling theories is that these carvings were part of a larger religious or spiritual practice, potentially related to the cult of fertility or ancestor worship. In the ancient world, human figures were often used to represent deities or revered ancestors, and the large eyes and stylized forms of the Lepenski Vir carvings could be interpreted as an attempt to capture the essence or spirit of these figures. Were these faces meant to represent ancestors or deities that the people of Lepenski Vir revered and sought to communicate with through ritual or prayer? Or could they have been intended as a form of protection or invocation, meant to ward off evil spirits or attract blessings from the natural world? The positioning of the carvings is equally intriguing. Some of the boulders bearing these figures are placed in prominent locations within the settlement, suggesting that they held particular significance within the community. Could the carvings have served as markers, spiritual or ceremonial landmarks, guiding individuals in their daily lives or in their rituals? The people of Lepenski Vir might have viewed the carvings not simply as art, but as powerful symbols embedded with meaning, their placement in the settlement indicative of their central role in the community's spiritual life. Yet, despite these possible interpretations, the full significance of the Lepenski Vir boulder carvings remains unclear. Some researchers believe that the carvings were related to a form of early religion or shamanistic practices. The repetitive nature of the motifs, particularly the faces, could indicate a symbolic attempt to represent the spiritual world and its connection to the physical world. The large eyes might be seen as a way to convey heightened perception or an otherworldly vision, suggesting that these figures were seen as intermediaries between the human world and the realm of the gods or spirits. Was there an early form of animism at play, where the people of Lepenski Vir saw the natural world as imbued with spiritual significance? The Lepenski Vir boulder carvings also raise questions about the role of art and symbolism in the development of early human culture. What prompted the people of Lepenski Vir to create such elaborate carvings in the first place? Was it an expression of creativity, or did it serve a more utilitarian purpose, perhaps functioning as a form of record-keeping or communication? Could the carvings have been a way to pass on knowledge, teachings, or stories from one generation to the next? Or were they purely ceremonial, designed to reflect the people's connection to the natural world, the cosmos, or the afterlife? Some of the more fringe theories suggest that the carvings at Lepenski Vir might even be related to a lost, advanced civilization that predates known history. Given the complexity of the site and the level of artistry involved in creating the boulders, could it be that the people of Lepenski Vir were part of an unknown culture, one that possessed advanced knowledge of symbolism and design? These ideas, while speculative, reflect a long-standing curiosity about the origins of civilization and the possibility that much of human history is yet to be uncovered. Could the Lepenski Vir boulder carvings be evidence of a lost tradition, a precursor to the civilizations that would later emerge in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley? For many, the most intriguing aspect of the Lepenski Vir boulder carvings is the fact that they remain shrouded in mystery. There is no written record to explain their purpose, and the people who created them left behind no direct clues as to their meaning. Unlike the Egyptians, whose hieroglyphs and monumental architecture offer some insight into their worldview, the creators of Lepenski Vir left behind only these cryptic stone faces. What were they trying to communicate? What beliefs, fears, or desires are encoded in the lines and shapes of these ancient carvings? Were these faces an attempt to capture the essence of the human spirit? Or were they an effort to reach out to something beyond the human realm, an expression of the unknown, the divine, or the supernatural? As we stand before the silent boulders of Lepenski Vir, the carvings seem to gaze back at us from the distant past, their meaning still just out of reach. Were they created as part of a shared belief system, a cultural tradition that has since vanished into the annals of history? Or do they represent something more? An enigmatic connection to a world of spiritual and cosmic significance that we are only beginning to understand? Like so many other archaeological mysteries, the Lepenski Vir boulder carvings stand as a reminder of the vast expanse of human history, a history that is only partially understood, and one that may hold many secrets still waiting to be uncovered. Leaving behind the enigmatic stone faces of Lepenski Vir, we now move to the vast, open steppe of Ukraine, where a series of mysterious rock panels bear witness to a long-lost tradition of art, ritual, and perhaps even communication. Known as the Kamyana Mohyla Petroglyph panels, this collection of ancient carvings is etched into the surfaces of massive boulders scattered across the landscape, seemingly hidden in plain sight. With over 3,000 images spread across more than 20 panels, these carvings present a tantalizing puzzle, one that has puzzled researchers for decades. Kamyana Mohyla, which translates to stone grave, is an ancient complex of rocks located near the village of Melitopol in southern Ukraine. The site itself is both a geological marvel and an archaeological enigma. The petroglyphs found here date back to the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, roughly between 4000 BC and 2000 BC, a time when the people of the Eurasian steppe lived in a world vastly different from the settled civilizations of the ancient world. Yet the carvings they left behind speak to a culture that was highly attuned to symbolism, spirituality, and perhaps even early forms of social organization. The petroglyphs at Kamyana Mohyla are varied and complex. Some of the most striking features are their clear depictions of animals, particularly wild bulls, stags, and horses, creatures that would have been integral to the daily life and beliefs of these early people. Other carvings appear to represent abstract symbols, geometric shapes, and even human-like figures, their forms stylized in ways that suggest a deep spiritual or ritualistic significance. The choice of subject matter alone, wild animals, symbols, and human figures, suggests that these people were deeply connected to the natural world around them, as well as to a belief system that may have placed importance on the forces of nature, the hunt, and perhaps even the afterlife. What is particularly remarkable about the Kamyana Mohyla petroglyphs is their placement. The panels are found on large stones scattered throughout the region, often in positions that seem carefully selected, on top of hills, near bodies of water, or in other locations that might have had a particular significance to the people who created them. Some of the stones are thought to have been arranged in a deliberate pattern, pointing toward certain celestial events or seasonal markers. Could these panels have served as markers, guiding travelers or marking important locations within the broader landscape? Despite the clear effort that went into their creation, much about the petroglyphs remains shrouded in mystery. The exact purpose of the carvings is still unclear. Were they simply decorative, or did they have a deeper, more ritualistic or symbolic function? Were they created as part of a larger religious or spiritual system, perhaps designed to honor gods, ancestors, or spirits? The fact that many of the petroglyphs appear to be stylized representations of animals suggests that they may have been tied to hunting rituals, but it's also possible that these carvings held a more abstract meaning, tied to concepts of life, death, and the natural order. One of the more intriguing aspects of the Kamyana Mohyla petroglyph panels is the recurrent motif of animals, particularly the bull. The bull appears repeatedly across the panels, often in highly stylized forms. The bull was an important symbol in many ancient cultures, associated with strength, fertility, and the forces of nature. Its presence in the Kamyana Mohyla carvings could suggest that these early steppe people saw the bull as a powerful, perhaps even sacred figure. Was the bull a totem animal, revered for its strength and connection to the earth? Or could it have symbolized a spiritual or divine force, an intermediary between the human and natural worlds? There are also abstract motifs and geometric patterns carved alongside the animals. These symbols, whose meanings remain speculative, add an additional layer of mystery to the site. Some researchers believe that these geometric patterns could represent a form of early writing or communication, an attempt by these early people to record information or tell stories through symbols. Could the geometric shapes serve as a rudimentary form of language or a visual code, meant to communicate important messages or rituals? Or were they purely decorative, meant to adorn the boulders without any deeper symbolic purpose? As with many other ancient petroglyph sites, there are a number of theories about the significance of the Kamyana Mohyla carvings. Some scholars suggest that they may have been created by a group of early herders or pastoralists who relied on livestock for survival. In this context, the depictions of animals, especially bulls and horses, could have been symbolic representations of the people's connection to their animals, their livelihoods, and their way of life. These petroglyphs could have served as a means of marking territory, claiming ownership, or invoking the protection of animals that were vital to their survival. Others propose that the carvings were part of a shamanistic tradition, where the images represented a connection to the spiritual world. The idea of shamans or spiritual leaders using symbols to communicate with the divine or the dead is widespread across ancient cultures, and the detailed, often mystical quality of the petroglyphs at Kamyana Mohyla suggests that the creators of these carvings might have had a sophisticated understanding of the forces beyond the physical world. Were these images part of a ritualistic practice meant to summon or honor spirits, gods, or ancestors? Another fascinating theory posits that the petroglyphs could be connected to early astronomical knowledge. Some researchers suggest that the arrangement of the carvings, coupled with their locations on the landscape, may have been intended to mark celestial events, such as solstices, equinoxes, or other important astronomical occurrences. Could the people of Kamyana Mohyla have used the carvings as a form of calendar, marking the passage of time and the changing of the seasons? The idea that these petroglyphs could have had a functional purpose beyond art or religion speaks to the potential sophistication of these early societies. As intriguing as these theories are, no definitive answers have been found. The lack of written records or clear context for the carvings leaves us with only the stones themselves, silent witnesses to a forgotten world. Were these carvings part of a larger, complex belief system that connected people, animals, and the cosmos in ways we cannot fully understand today? Did they serve as a form of communication, a code, or a map to guide the people of the steppe? Or were they purely an expression of the human desire to leave a mark on the world, a way of asserting existence and meaning in a vast, indifferent landscape? As we gaze upon the Kamyana Mohyla petroglyph panels, we are left with more questions than answers. What did these ancient symbols mean to the people who carved them? What world did they inhabit, and what drove them to carve their stories into the rocks? Like so many other archaeological mysteries, the answers may lie just beyond our reach, hidden beneath layers of time and earth. Yet, with each discovery, we inch closer to understanding the distant past and the lives of those who once walked the land. And perhaps, as we continue to search, we will uncover not only the meaning of the carvings, but a deeper understanding of the human need to connect with something greater than ourselves. Leaving the windswept plains of Ukraine behind, we turn our attention to the Mediterranean, to an island where ancient stones rise from the earth, bathed in sunlight and shadow, casting an eerie yet beautiful presence over the landscape. Here, in Malta, amidst its rich history and clear blue skies, the Hagar temples stand as silent sentinels to a distant age. Among these megalithic structures, there lies a mystery that has both fascinated and confounded archaeologists for centuries: the Hagar solar alignment stones. The Hagar temple complex, located on the southern coast of Malta, is one of the island's most significant prehistoric sites. Built sometime around 3600 BC, it predates even the pyramids of Egypt by millennia. The site itself is a testament to the engineering and architectural prowess of an ancient people who, despite the lack of written records, managed to create monumental structures that have stood the test of time. The temples are composed of massive stone blocks, some weighing several tons, and the alignment of these stones suggests that their builders possessed a keen understanding of geometry, astronomy, and the natural world. However, it is the Hagar solar alignment stones that truly set this site apart from others of its kind. Nestled among the larger megaliths of the temple complex, these stones are placed with an uncanny precision that appears to be tied to the movements of the sun itself. On certain days of the year, specifically during the equinoxes, the sun's rays align perfectly with the arrangement of the stones, casting a striking visual effect that leaves a sense of awe and mystery in its wake. The discovery of these alignment stones has led many to believe that the people who constructed the Hagar temples were not just interested in building religious structures, but also in tracking the passage of time, marking celestial events, and potentially aligning their rituals with the movements of the sun. The precision with which the stones are aligned suggests that their creators had an advanced understanding of astronomy, possibly using the sun to determine important dates for agricultural cycles, religious observances, or even for navigation. As the sunlight pours over the ancient stones, it's easy to imagine the people of Malta standing at the site, watching in reverence as the sun's rays illuminated the stones, marking the start of a new season or signaling the time for an important ritual. Was this alignment purely functional, tied to the agricultural calendar of these early Maltese inhabitants? Or was there a deeper, more spiritual meaning to the positioning of these stones, one that connected the people to the heavens, to the gods, and to the larger cosmos? It is important to consider that the Hagar site is just one of several megalithic temples on the island of Malta, each of which features similar solar alignments and astronomical markings. These alignments are not isolated occurrences, but part of a broader pattern that spans the entire island, suggesting that the people of ancient Malta had a comprehensive and interconnected understanding of the sun's movements. What other purposes might these alignments have served? Could they have been part of a complex system for tracking celestial events, or perhaps a form of ancient observatory? There are many theories about the purpose of the Hagar solar alignment stones, but no definitive answers. Some scholars suggest that the stones were part of a larger religious system, with the sun playing a central role in the rituals of the people. The sun, in many ancient cultures, was often associated with life, death, and rebirth, and its alignment with the stones at Hagar could have signaled important moments in the spiritual or ceremonial life of the community. Did these ancient people believe that the sun had a direct influence on their lives, and did they construct these temples to honor or communicate with solar deities? Other researchers propose a more practical explanation, suggesting that the stones were primarily used as a type of calendar, helping the inhabitants of Hagar to mark the changing of the seasons and determine the best times for planting and harvesting crops. Given Malta's position in the Mediterranean, agriculture would have played a key role in the survival of these early societies, and understanding the rhythms of nature, particularly the movement of the sun, would have been essential. Was this sophisticated astronomical knowledge passed down from generation to generation, a key to the agricultural success of the early Maltese people? Still, there are those who entertain more speculative ideas. Some suggest that the Hagar solar alignment stones could be evidence of a lost civilization with advanced astronomical knowledge, far beyond what is currently understood. Could these stones have been part of a larger, perhaps even global network of astronomical alignments? The idea that ancient peoples, long before the rise of well-documented civilizations like Egypt or Mesopotamia, might have shared an advanced understanding of the cosmos is one that has captured the imagination of many. Could there have been a widespread interconnected network of ancient sites that spanned across Europe, Africa, and the Near East, all of which were aligned to the sun and stars in ways we have yet to fully understand? In this context, the Hagar solar alignment stones may be more than just a curiosity of ancient Malta. They might represent a key to a much larger mystery about the origins of astronomical knowledge and the role that the sun and stars played in the early development of human culture. Were the builders of Hagar part of a broader, lost tradition of solar worship, one that connected disparate cultures across time and space? Or were these stones simply part of a local, yet highly sophisticated tradition that remains uniquely Maltese? As we stand in the shadow of the Hagar temples, looking out over the vast Mediterranean landscape, we are reminded of the profound connection that ancient peoples had with the natural world. The precise alignment of the stones with the movements of the sun suggests a culture that was deeply aware of the cycles of nature and the cosmic forces that governed their lives. Whether as a tool for agriculture, a form of religious observance, or a reflection of an advanced understanding of the heavens, the Hagar solar alignment stones invite us to reflect on the role of the sun in the lives of our ancestors. The mystery, however, remains unsolved. Were these stones merely a practical tool, or did they serve a far more profound and spiritual purpose? As with many ancient sites, the answers are elusive, leaving us to wonder how much of human history has yet to be uncovered. How many secrets are hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Perhaps, as we continue to investigate and explore these ancient sites, we will uncover not only the mysteries of the past, but also a deeper understanding of the ancient peoples who shaped the world we live in today. So, what remains hidden within the stones of Hagar What knowledge might still be waiting for us to discover just beneath the surface? Only time and further exploration will tell. As we journey from the towering stones of Hagar to the rugged landscape of Mnajdra, we find ourselves drawn to another remarkable site in Malta, a place where the mysteries of the ancient world are etched in stone, aligning not just with the sun, but perhaps with something much deeper. Here, at the Mnajdra Lower Temple, A series of intricate marks on the stone surface have raised questions that continue to baffle archaeologists and scholars alike. The Mnajdra Lower Temple Alignment Marks. Located on the southern coast of Malta, Mnajdra sits just a short distance from Hagar, but it is a world apart in its enigmatic composition. The site consists of 3 temples, the oldest of which is thought to have been constructed around 3600 BC, again, thousands of years before the Egyptian pyramids. As with Hagar, the construction of these temples required an advanced understanding of architecture, stoneworking, and perhaps the cosmos. But it is the alignment marks within the lower temple that offer us a glimpse into a world where the intersection of architecture and astronomy may have been even more profound than we could have imagined. At first glance, the Mnajdra Lower Temple may seem like a typical ancient megalithic site. Massive limestone blocks, their surfaces worn by centuries of exposure to the elements. Yet, when we look closer, the stone surfaces reveal something extraordinary. A series of alignment marks, etched into the rock with such precision that they appear to serve a purpose far beyond simple decoration or accidental wear. These marks seem to align with specific celestial events, particularly the movements of the sun, making it clear that the builders of Mnajdra were far more attuned to the celestial sphere than most ancient cultures. But what were these marks meant to represent? And what role did they play in the lives of the people who created them? The most striking feature of these alignment marks is their connection to the sun. During the solstices, the sun's rays shine directly through the passageways of the temple, illuminating the stone carvings with a golden light. But it is the marks themselves that tell a more intricate story. Some of the markings appear to be intentionally placed to correspond with specific solar events, such as the winter and summer solstices, as well as the equinoxes. These solar alignments suggest that the people of Mnajdra had a sophisticated understanding of the sun's movements and used the temple as a tool to track the passage of time, perhaps even to time rituals or ceremonies. The arrangement of the marks, their placement on the stones, and the alignment with solar events hint at a purposeful design. But why did these ancient builders choose to mark their stones in this way? Was it simply a practical method of marking the passing seasons, or was there a deeper, more spiritual connection at play? The precise nature of the alignment and the ritualistic importance of the sun in many ancient cultures suggest that the markings could have had a dual purpose, both functional and symbolic. In some ways, the Mnajdra Lower Temple alignment marks serve as a kind of ancient calendar, an instrument for recording the movements of the sun and perhaps other celestial bodies, with the power to influence the lives of those who revered it. Could these marks have been used to determine the best time for planting, harvesting, or other crucial agricultural tasks? Malta's climate, with its warm Mediterranean temperatures, would have made agriculture vital to the survival of its early inhabitants, and an understanding of the sun's patterns would have been essential. But could these alignments also have served a more esoteric function? Perhaps the sun, in its movement across the sky, was not merely a force of nature to be tracked for practical reasons, but a symbol of divinity or cosmic order, something to be honored through rituals performed at the right time, in the right place. These questions raise a further possibility, that the marks may have been designed not just to track the sun's movements, but to establish a relationship between the people and the cosmos. In ancient cultures, the sun was often seen as a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a symbol of life, death, and rebirth. Could the people of Mnajdra have believed that by aligning their temple with the sun, they were ensuring divine favor or gaining access to hidden knowledge about the nature of the universe? These marks, etched into the stone and illuminated by the rays of the sun at precise moments, may have served as a kind of portal, a gateway between the human and the divine. The idea of ancient sites being aligned with the sun is not unique to Malta. Across the globe, From the pyramids of Egypt to the stone circles of Britain, the alignment of architecture with celestial events has been a recurring theme. But the Mnajdra lower temple alignment marks are unique in their precision and their connection to a specific solar event. While other sites may have been aligned with the rising or setting sun, the marks at Mnajdra seem to align with the sun in a more deliberate and ritualistic way, raising the question, were these ancient people trying to harness the power of the sun for something greater than mere survival? One theory suggests that the temple and the alignment marks within it may have been used to track the passage of time in a more cyclical fashion. The sun, as a symbol of renewal and rebirth, may have been seen as a force that governed not only the natural world, but also the spiritual realm. In this way, the alignment of the marks with specific solar events could have signaled a renewal of the spiritual order, a time to honor the gods and renew the bonds between the earthly and celestial realms. This would make the solar alignment not just a practical tool, but a deeply spiritual one, aimed at reinforcing the cosmic order and maintaining harmony between humanity and the universe. Yet, despite these theories, much about the Mnajdra lower temple alignment marks remains uncertain. Were they simply a functional tool, part of an agricultural calendar, or did they carry deeper spiritual significance? Were these marks part of a broader tradition shared by other ancient cultures, or were they unique to the people of Malta? And perhaps most intriguingly, did the creators of these marks possess knowledge that we have yet to uncover? A secret understanding of the cosmos, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? As we stand at Mnajdra, gazing at the alignment marks on the stones, we are left with more questions than answers. What other mysteries might still be buried beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered by future generations? Were these marks the key to understanding an ancient worldview, one that saw the sun as both a physical and spiritual force? Or is the answer lost to time, hidden within the stones and the shadows of an ancient world? The mysteries of Mnajdra remain elusive and enigmatic, calling us to look deeper into the stones, the light, and the unknown realms of our shared history. As we journey further into the shadows of ancient mysteries, we find ourselves in the heart of Bulgaria, where the landscape is dotted with ancient ruins and forgotten monuments, each one offering a glimpse into a distant past that still holds many secrets. Here, at a site known as Gradeshnitsa, lies a discovery that has baffled archaeologists and researchers for decades: the Gradeshnitsa plate symbols. Discovered in the late 20th century, the Gradeshnitsa plate is a small but incredibly intricate artifact, carved with strange symbols and markings that appear to be far more than mere decoration. The plate itself is made of clay, about 25 centimeters in diameter, and it features a series of geometric patterns and mysterious motifs. These symbols, though visually captivating, are unlike anything else from the time period, leading to a sense of intrigue that cannot easily be dispelled. The site of Gradeshnitsa is not particularly well known in the broader archaeological community, yet it harbors some of Bulgaria's most puzzling relics. The Gradeshnitsa plate has become a focal point for debate, as the markings etched into its surface seem to challenge the understanding of the culture and people who crafted it. The plate is thought to date back to around 3000 BC, placing it firmly in the Neolithic period, an era known for the development of early agricultural societies. Yet, the symbols on the plate do not appear to align with any known writing systems or iconography from that time. At first glance, the motifs on the Gradeshnitsa plate resemble abstract geometric patterns, circles, lines, and swirls that might be dismissed as the work of an early artistic mind or an unknown craft. However, as researchers have continued to study the symbols, some distinct patterns emerge that hint at something far more sophisticated. Could these markings represent a form of communication, a proto-writing system perhaps, lost to time? Or do they hold an entirely different purpose, one that transcends the boundaries of language itself. The idea that the Gradeshnitsa plate might contain an early written language is one of the leading theories, but it remains far from certain. The symbols themselves do not match any known scripts, whether from the ancient Near East or other early civilizations that were developing at the time. Some symbols resemble those found in much later traditions, such as the Celts, while others seem entirely unique, almost alien in their structure. Could this be evidence of a forgotten culture with its own complex system of communication, lost to history? The more intriguing question, however, lies in the potential meaning behind these symbols. What do they represent? Were they used for ritualistic purposes, perhaps related to early religious practices or a cosmological worldview? The Neolithic peoples of the Balkans were not only early farmers, but also likely had spiritual beliefs tied to the natural world, the sun, the moon, the earth, and the heavens. Could the symbols on the Gradeshnitsa plate be a form of cosmic mapping, a way to record celestial events, agricultural cycles, or the movements of animals and seasons? What's particularly puzzling is that some of the symbols on the plate appear to represent concepts or objects that go beyond what would be expected for the time. In particular, a series of concentric circles, spirals, and wavy lines have been suggested by some to represent solar and lunar cycles, though this interpretation remains speculative. In ancient cultures, the sun and moon were often seen as vital forces, determining everything from the changing of the seasons to the rhythms of life itself. Could these markings have been a form of calendrical knowledge, used to track the passage of time and the shifts in the natural world? Or perhaps they were a visual representation of the relationship between humans and the divine? This link to the celestial is further reinforced by the fact that similar motifs can be found in other ancient cultures, sometimes thousands of miles away. Some researchers have pointed to similar symbols in Mesopotamian and Anatolian iconography, while others note the resemblance to later traditions of sun worship that appear across Europe and the Middle East. Could the Gradeshnitsa plate be an artifact of a larger, interconnected prehistoric world, one where ideas and knowledge spread across vast distances long before the rise of writing and the rise of well-known empires? Alternatively, there is a more mystical interpretation of the symbols, one that considers the plate as a form of ritual object, perhaps used in ceremonies or as an offering to the gods. Ancient societies often used objects like these in sacred rituals, believing that the symbols they inscribed carried power or energy, connecting the physical world with the spiritual realm. Could the Gradeshnitsa plate have been a tool for divination, used by a shamanic or priestly class to interpret the will of the gods or to predict the future? The placement of the symbols might suggest an attempt to codify a spiritual or divine law, an effort to bring order and understanding to the cosmos, to make sense of the forces of nature that were otherwise beyond human comprehension. Yet, despite the fascinating possibilities, no conclusive explanation has emerged. The Gradeshnitsa plate continues to baffle scholars, who are left with more questions than answers. Was it a form of writing or a purely symbolic object? Was it a tool for understanding the cosmos or a piece of religious paraphernalia? And if these symbols were part of a larger system of knowledge, who created them? And why did this knowledge fade into obscurity? As with many ancient artifacts, the true meaning of the Gradeshnitsa plate may forever remain out of reach. It serves as a reminder of how little we know about the cultures that came before us, how many secrets are still hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be unearthed. The markings on the plate are a language we may never fully decode, but they carry within them a message that transcends time, whispering the mysteries of a long-lost civilization to those willing to listen. Perhaps the Gradeshnitsa plate is not just a relic of the past, but a key to unlocking the deeper, universal questions that have occupied human beings for millennia. What did our ancestors know about the natural world, and how did they interpret the symbols that governed their lives? The answers, for now, remain just beyond our reach. The Gradeshnitsa plate stands as a monument to the unknown, a testament to the ingenuity of a people whose ideas and beliefs may have been far more sophisticated than we can yet comprehend. What do the symbols on the Gradeshnitsa plate really mean? What knowledge or wisdom might they hold, waiting to be discovered? The mystery continues, and the search for answers is far from over. As we travel deeper into the heart of Eurasia, we come to a place where the boundaries of history blur, and the past whispers to us from the depths of ancient graves. In the wide plains of Volga River in modern-day Russia, a mysterious culture once thrived, a people whose burial practices and symbolic artistry have left behind enigmatic traces of their worldview. This is the world of the Khvalynsk culture, a society that flourished around 5000 BC during the late Mesolithic and early Neolithic periods. One of the most striking features of the Khvalynsk culture is their use of intricate burial symbols, which have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Unearthed in a series of graves near the Volga region, these symbols are carved onto a range of objects, from pottery to bone tools, and even on the remains of human skeletons. At first glance, they might seem like simple adornments, or perhaps marks of an ordinary life, but closer examination suggests a more profound and spiritual purpose. The burial sites of the Khvalynsk people are a world of their own, sprawling across a landscape marked by gentle hills, fertile plains, and the winding curve of the Volga. It's a land where the earth still seems to hold the secrets of those who walked it long before the rise of empires. Among the artifacts found at these sites are finely crafted ceramic vessels, beads, and figurines, ordinary items perhaps, but each one bearing signs of symbolic significance. What stands out, however, are the mysterious markings, intricate designs carved or painted onto burial goods, or even directly onto the bones of the dead themselves. The burial symbols are composed of abstract shapes, triangles, circles, and spiral motifs, along with more complex geometric patterns. These markings are not just random scratches. They appear to follow specific forms and arrangements, suggesting a language, or at the very least, a system of meaning that is yet to be understood. The symbols are often found in association with human remains, sometimes engraved into bones, other times painted onto pottery used in the burial rites. The patterns are strikingly similar across various Khvalynsk sites, hinting at a shared cultural tradition, one steeped in ritual and perhaps even a form of early spiritual expression. The placement of these symbols raises a deeper mystery. In many of the graves, the deceased were buried with these marked objects, suggesting that the symbols may have been used not just to commemorate the dead, but to guide their souls to the afterlife. Were these markings intended to protect the deceased, or were they offerings to the gods, meant to ensure safe passage into the next world? The spirals, circles, and linear motifs could represent the cyclical nature of life and death, a concept that many early societies understood and revered. Was this a culture that believed in reincarnation, or perhaps one that viewed death as part of an ongoing cosmic cycle? The use of geometry in these symbols is particularly intriguing. In many ancient cultures, geometry was seen as a means of connecting the physical world with the divine. The Khvalynsk people may have used these symbols as a way to link their daily lives with the greater forces of the universe. The spirals, often seen as symbols of energy and growth, could represent the passage of time, the seasons, or even the flow of life itself. The circles might symbolize wholeness, unity, or the endless cycle of birth and rebirth. But why were these symbols chosen, and what did they mean to the people who created them? As with many ancient cultures, the true meaning of these symbols may never be fully understood. Some scholars suggest that the Khvalynsk people had a form of proto-writing, a system of symbols used to encode ideas or events, long before the rise of true written language. The presence of these marks on burial goods, in particular, suggests that they were not purely decorative but had a ritualistic or ceremonial function. Could these symbols have been used in religious ceremonies or as a form of early storytelling, capturing the essence of a life lived or the journey to the afterlife? While many of these symbols seem to be related to the deceased and the afterlife, it's also possible that they held a broader meaning in the Khvalynsk worldview. In their time, the Khvalynsk culture was transitioning from a hunter-gatherer society to a more settled, agricultural way of life. The shift in lifestyle could have prompted a re-evaluation of their spiritual beliefs and practices. The symbols on burial objects might represent a deeper cosmology, one that reflected their changing relationship with the land, with nature, and with the gods. Speculation about the meaning of the Khvalynsk burial symbols often points to their connection to the natural world. Some researchers suggest that the spiral motifs may represent the cyclical patterns of the seasons, with the sun's movement across the sky serving as a guiding force for these early people. Others believe that the symbols were used to mark important rites of passage, such as birth, death, or seasonal transitions, events that held deep significance in a society closely tied to the rhythms of nature. Could these markings, in their simplicity, be a testament to the Khvalynsk people's belief in the interconnectedness of life, death, and the cosmos? Another intriguing possibility is that these symbols were part of a larger, interconnected spiritual system that spanned across the Eurasian steppes. The use of similar motifs across vast distances suggests the possibility of cultural exchange, where shared ideas and symbols traveled between groups. The spirals and circles found on the Khvalynsk burial goods are similar to motifs seen in other ancient cultures, particularly those in the Near East and Central Asia. Were these symbols part of a larger, pan-Eurasian tradition? Were the Khvalynsk people in contact with other ancient cultures, exchanging knowledge about the cosmos and spiritual beliefs? Despite the many theories, the Khvalynsk burial symbols remain one of the great mysteries of prehistoric Europe. Their exact meaning may never be fully understood, but they provide a glimpse into a society whose beliefs were intimately connected to the world around them. The marks they left behind in the graves of their ancestors speak of a deep understanding of the cycles of life, the forces of nature, and perhaps even a desire to transcend death itself. What were these symbols really for? Were they simply a form of early art? Or were they imbued with deeper meaning, representing a culture's spiritual beliefs and connection to the universe? Did they carry knowledge or wisdom that we are still trying to decipher? As we ponder these questions, we are reminded of how much we have yet to learn about the cultures that came before us. The Khvalynsk burial symbols stand as a silent testament to the complexity of human thought, offering a window into a world long past and a mystery that may never be fully solved. As we travel eastward, beyond the vast steppes of Central Asia and into the ancient heart of China, we encounter a culture that remains enshrouded in mystery. Deep in the fertile plains of Hebei province, a region that would one day be home to one of the world's oldest and most enduring civilizations, archaeologists have unearthed remnants of a culture that flourished over 5,000 years ago, the Sishan culture. Among the artifacts discovered from this enigmatic people, one discovery stands out in particular: the Sishan culture markings. Simple yet puzzling, these markings seem to defy a straightforward explanation, raising questions about early writing, symbolism, and cultural practices. The site of Sishan itself offers little more than the quiet echoes of time. Nestled on the northern edge of the North China Plain, this ancient settlement consists of a series of depressions in the earth, signs of long-abandoned buildings and homes. The landscape is dotted with traces of pottery, tools, and human remains, artifacts that tell of a society whose everyday life revolved around the rhythms of agriculture and community. Yet, amid these mundane relics, something extraordinary was found. Carved into the surfaces of pottery fragments, bones, and even stones were strange, undecipherable markings. At first glance, the Sishan markings seem deceptively simple. They appear as geometric shapes, lines, dots, and grids that could easily be dismissed as decoration or rudimentary art. However, as archaeologists have delved deeper into the study of these symbols, they've uncovered a pattern that suggests something far more complex than mere ornamentation. Some scholars have likened the markings to early forms of writing, while others speculate that they may represent a form of proto-writing, an embryonic stage in the evolution of written language. But what do these markings truly signify? Are they the vestiges of a lost system of communication, or do they hold another, more profound meaning? The Sishan culture itself is believed to have existed around 5000 BC to 3000 BC, during a time when early Neolithic communities were beginning to shift from a nomadic lifestyle to a more settled, agricultural existence. This period was marked by the development of pottery, the domestication of animals, and the cultivation of crops like millet. It was a time when communities were laying the groundwork for the more complex societies that would follow in China's long and storied history. Yet, despite its significance, the Sishan people left behind little in the way of written records. Most of what we know about them comes from their material culture, the tools, pottery, and burial goods that have been unearthed in the region. The Sishan markings are often found on pottery fragments, which were commonly used for storage, cooking, and ritual purposes. Some of the markings appear to be inscribed directly onto the pottery's surface, while others are painted or stamped into the clay before it was fired. The sheer number and variety of these symbols, over 100 distinct marks have been recorded, suggest that they were not random. Some symbols are repeated across multiple fragments, indicating that they may have held particular significance. But what was their purpose? Could these markings have been a form of identification, a way to mark ownership or distinguish different types of pottery? Or, as some scholars have suggested, could they be a rudimentary form of communication, a precursor to written language? One of the more striking aspects of the Sishan markings is their similarity to symbols found in other early Neolithic cultures across China. Some of the patterns resemble those used by the later Yangshao and Longshan cultures, which are known for their more elaborate ceramic art and early writing systems. The fact that these symbols share certain visual characteristics with those from other regions suggests that there may have been a wider cultural exchange during this period. Did the Sishan people influence the development of writing in ancient China, or were they themselves influenced by other cultures? And if these markings are indeed related to writing, what does this suggest about the early development of literacy in the region? The debate surrounding the Sishan markings is as much about what they represent as it is about the people who created them. Some scholars have proposed that the markings might have been used for religious or ceremonial purposes. The Sishan culture is known to have had strong spiritual beliefs, and many of the artifacts found at their burial sites suggest that the people placed significant importance on the afterlife. Could these symbols have been part of rituals or prayers meant to communicate with the gods or to ensure safe passage to the afterlife? The use of symbols in religious contexts is well documented in many ancient societies, and it is possible that the Sishan markings served a similar function, creating a connection between the living and the divine. Alternatively, the markings might have been used as a form of record-keeping. The idea that these early people could have been using symbols to track agricultural cycles, astronomical events, or other important data is a compelling one. The geometric patterns might represent a rudimentary form of timekeeping, used to mark the passage of the seasons or the movements of celestial bodies. In an agricultural society, such records would have been vital for survival, allowing the people to predict planting and harvesting times, or to track important natural events such as the flooding of rivers. Could these markings have been a form of early science, a way to make sense of the world around them? Another possibility is that the markings could represent a form of social or political control. The Sishan people lived in a society that was beginning to form larger, more complex communities, and the rise of such societies often brings with it the need for systems of organization and authority. Were these symbols a way for leaders or elders to assert control over the community, to define group identity, or to delineate social classes? The use of symbolic markings to convey power and authority is not new, and it's possible that the Sishan culture used these symbols in much the same way. Despite the many theories, the truth behind the Sishan markings remains elusive. No definitive explanation has emerged, and scholars continue to debate the meaning and purpose of these mysterious symbols. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. These markings could be a combination of religious, scientific, and social symbols, woven together to create a multifaceted system of meaning. Or perhaps they were simply the early musings of a people trying to make sense of their world, experimenting with symbols as a way to understand the mysteries of life and death. What is certain, however, is that the Sishan markings provide us with a glimpse into the minds of an ancient people whose legacy has largely been lost to time. These symbols are more than just marks on pottery. They are a testament to human curiosity, creativity, and the desire to communicate across time and space. Whether they were used to record the cycles of the earth, to mark the sacred, or to tell stories of their gods and ancestors, the Sishan markings stand as a reminder that the written word, if indeed these symbols represent writing, did not emerge overnight, but evolved slowly, piece by piece, over centuries. And so, the Sishan markings continue to beckon us, drawing us into the enigma of an ancient world that is only just beginning to reveal its secrets. Were these symbols the dawn of written language in China, or something entirely different? The mystery remains unsolved, and the markings, so simple yet so profound, remain a puzzle we have yet to fully decipher. The answers, for now, lie buried in the soil of Hebei, waiting for the next discovery to shed light on a forgotten culture and its elusive symbols. As we leave behind the vast steppes of Central Asia and the ancient remains of the Volga River basin, we turn our gaze further eastward into the heart of China. It is here, on the fertile plains of the Hebei province, that we encounter a culture whose enigmatic legacy has captivated archaeologists for over a century, the Sishan culture. A civilization that flourished between approximately 5000 BC and 3000 BC, the Sishan people were early adopters of agriculture, planting millet and tending to their domesticated animals. Their society is believed to have laid some of the foundational elements for later Chinese dynasties, but one of their most mysterious legacies lies in the strange and undecipherable markings they left behind. These markings, found on pottery fragments, bone tools, and even human remains, seem to defy easy explanation. Carved into the surfaces of everyday objects, they appear as simple geometric patterns, lines, dots, and squares, at first glance not much more than ornamental decorations. Yet as experts have painstakingly analyzed these symbols over the years, the mystery deepens. With each discovery, it becomes increasingly clear that these markings may be far more than just decorative. They might be a window into an ancient communication system, an early form of writing, or something even more mysterious. The site of Sishan, located on the northern edge of China's North Plain, is not one of grandiose monuments or palaces. Rather, it's a quiet, almost unassuming place, an area marked by the soft undulations of the land, where the past is buried just beneath the surface. The village itself, long abandoned, consists mainly of earth depressions that hint at the outlines of houses, storage pits, and other domestic structures. The land is rich in agricultural potential, a testament to the early settlers' ability to master the rhythms of the earth. But it's not the everyday objects that have piqued the curiosity of archaeologists. It's the markings, often found on shards of pottery, bone fragments, and stones. Some of these markings resemble rudimentary geometric shapes, circles, triangles, and squares. Others are more abstract, appearing as intricate patterns of lines and dots that seem almost deliberate in their placement. Yet despite their frequency and consistency, the meaning behind these symbols remains elusive. Could these be an early form of writing, a proto-script that predates known systems of written language by thousands of years? Or are they merely decorative, perhaps representing symbols of fertility, the passage of time, or the cosmos, as many early human cultures used geometric shapes for spiritual or ritualistic purposes? The more one examines the Sishan markings, the more intriguing they become. For example, some of the pottery fragments display what could be interpreted as simple, repetitive patterns, marks that are not randomly placed but rather seem to follow specific orders or symmetry. These patterns might have been painted or carved onto the objects during the manufacturing process, perhaps with symbolic intent. However, the fact that these motifs are often found on burial goods, pottery placed with the dead, suggests that they held significance beyond just decoration. What if these symbols were used as part of burial rituals or as offerings to the gods? Perhaps they represented the souls of the deceased or were meant to ensure a safe passage into the afterlife. The markings are not limited to pottery alone. In some instances, they have been found etched onto bones and tools, suggesting that they may have had a broader application, one that extended into everyday life. What could this mean for the understanding of early Chinese society? Were the markings used for some kind of daily record-keeping, such as tracking agricultural cycles or seasonal changes? Or did they serve a ritualistic purpose, connecting the people of Sishan with the spiritual world around them? These questions remain at the heart of the ongoing research. Scholars have proposed various theories about the origin and purpose of the Sishan symbols. Some suggest that they may be connected to religious or spiritual beliefs, perhaps representing the forces of nature, the heavens, or even ancestors. The use of geometric symbols to represent natural cycles, such as the phases of the moon, the sun's path across the sky, or the seasonal changes in the environment, was common in many ancient cultures. Could these symbols be attempts to make sense of the cosmos? Did the people of Sishan have a sophisticated understanding of time and celestial movements long before the development of formal calendars or written language? Other researchers have speculated that the markings might be a form of early writing, a visual language used to record events, transactions, or knowledge. The fact that some of the symbols appear across multiple sites and objects suggests that they were not just local customs, but part of a wider cultural tradition. Could this mean that the Sishan culture, much like the later Shang dynasty, had a form of script that was used to communicate across communities? It's possible that the markings were an early, rudimentary attempt at writing, a precursor to the complex oracle bone script that would emerge centuries later in China. Despite these possibilities, there are still many who question whether the Sishan markings should be considered writing at all. After all, there is no direct evidence that these symbols were used to convey specific linguistic messages. Unlike the Mesopotamian cuneiform or Egyptian hieroglyphs, which were developed for specific communicative purposes, the Sishan symbols may have been more abstract, artistic representations or symbolic markers that were not meant to be read in the traditional sense. Could these markings be something closer to a visual language, a means of expressing ideas or spiritual beliefs that didn't rely on an alphabet or phonetic system? The possibility that these symbols might have been part of a proto-writing system is tantalizing, but it is still very much a hypothesis. In fact, the idea of early writing systems emerging independently in different parts of the world is a theory that has been debated for centuries. The discovery of the Sishan markings, along with similar, if somewhat different, symbols found in other early Chinese sites like Yangshao and Longshan, raises important questions about the development of writing and the connections between early cultures in China. Yet, there are those who argue that the markings might have had no practical function at all. Perhaps they were purely symbolic or ritualistic, designed to express abstract concepts rather than convey concrete information. The repetitive nature of the designs could indicate that they were used in ceremonies, rites, or offerings, perhaps to invoke a higher power or ensure blessings for the community. Could these symbols represent a connection to the divine or to ancestral spirits? In many ancient cultures, the act of marking objects, whether through carving, painting, or inscription, was a way of invoking spiritual forces or placing a symbolic seal on something important. These markings may not have been about communication at all, but about creating a connection between the physical world and the supernatural. Despite the many theories, one thing remains clear. The Sicyon markings are a reminder that our understanding of early civilizations is still incomplete. These symbols, although seemingly simple, are a reflection of the complexity of human thought long before the advent of written language as we know it. They tell of a people who were beginning to make sense of their world through symbols and art, perhaps using them to express spiritual beliefs, track the passage of time, or mark important events. As we stand before the remnants of the Sicyon people and their mysterious symbols, we are reminded that history is not a linear progression, but a series of moments, each one leaving behind traces of ideas and practices that we may never fully understand. The markings etched into pottery and bone may never be completely deciphered, but they offer us a glimpse into the minds of the ancient people who created them. Whether they were part of an early writing system, spiritual rituals, or something entirely different, the mystery of the Sicyon markings continues to captivate those who seek to understand the origins of human communication, symbolism, and belief. In the quiet plains of Hebei, the markings left by the Sicyon people remain a tantalizing puzzle. What do they really mean? Were they the first stirrings of written language, or were they symbols of something far older and more profound? The answers may remain elusive, but the markings themselves, in their simplicity and complexity, offer a window into a world long gone, a world that we are still trying to understand. And perhaps, as we continue to explore and uncover the past, we may find that there is still much more to learn about the ancient cultures that shaped the world we know today. As we move from one of the most enigmatic prehistorical cultures in China, we shift our focus to a site much closer to the crossroads of history, where ancient mysteries continue to stir the imagination. Nestled within the rugged terrain of the Levant, in the heart of Palestine, lies a discovery that has both puzzled and fascinated archaeologists for decades. It is here, at the Motsa site, that an assemblage of figurines, small, intricately crafted and seemingly deliberate in their design, was uncovered, prompting questions that have yet to be definitively answered. The Motsa figurine assemblage, found near the modern-day Jerusalem area, is a collection of human and animal-shaped figures carved from bone, ivory, and stone. They date back to the Upper Paleolithic period, around 20,000 to 15,000 years ago, a time when humans were in the midst of transitioning from hunter-gatherers to settled agriculturalists. The figurines themselves are small, ranging from just a few centimeters to several inches in height, and each one is remarkably detailed, with features that suggest a high degree of craftsmanship and intent. Some represent human forms, while others depict animals, including a particularly striking carving of a bird-like creature. The work is so precise that one might almost believe these figures were created for a specific purpose, though exactly what that purpose was remains shrouded in mystery. The discovery of the Motsa figurine assemblage was made in the early 1990s, during excavations of a prehistoric settlement in the area. What makes this assemblage particularly intriguing is not just the quality of the carvings, but the fact that these figurines appear to have been deliberately grouped together in specific formations, as if arranged in a way that suggests they held some kind of ritualistic or symbolic significance. There are no definitive records that explain why these figures were created or what role they played in the lives of the people who made them. But the positioning and selection of the figures seem to imply they were part of a larger, more complex cultural system. The figurines themselves are not unlike other prehistoric carvings discovered across the region. Similar representations of humans and animals have been found at other sites across Palestine and the wider Levant. But the Motsa collection stands apart due to the way these figures were grouped. In some cases, they appear to be clustered around hearths, suggesting a possible ritual context. In others, they seem to be placed at the center of what might have been a communal space, perhaps even serving as symbolic markers for an area of spiritual significance. These spatial arrangements strongly hint at the idea that the figurines may have had a ceremonial purpose, though exactly what role they played in the social or religious practices of their creators remains a matter of speculation. The figurines themselves are remarkably well preserved, despite their age. Carved with remarkable precision, many feature exaggerated facial features, with wide, staring eyes and full, pronounced lips. These human figures bear a strong resemblance to the Venus figurines found in Europe, with their curvaceous forms and emphasis on fertility attributes. Some researchers have suggested that the Motsa figurines, like the Venus figurines, could have been associated with fertility rites or goddess worship, symbolic of the importance of reproduction and the continuity of life. This theory would tie the Motsa figures into a broader tradition of ancient effigies designed to invoke divine favor or ensure the well-being of the community. But there is more to the Motsa assemblage than meets the eye. While some figurines are indeed human-like, others take on more ambiguous forms. One particular figure has been described as resembling a bird or a hybrid creature, leading some archaeologists to question whether the makers of the Motsa figures were attempting to create representations of gods, spirits, or totemic animals. The bird-like figure, in particular, has sparked theories about the symbolic meaning of birds in ancient societies. Birds, with their ability to soar between the heavens and the earth, have often been seen as messengers of the divine in many cultures. Could the Motsa bird figurine have represented a connection to the spiritual realm? Was it a totem or a protective symbol, placed with the belief that it could ward off evil spirits or facilitate communication with ancestors? The use of animals in the figurines is not limited to birds alone. Other carvings depict what appears to be a series of highly stylized representations of animals, some resembling familiar creatures like gazelles, while others remain more ambiguous. These animal forms could represent the animals that were central to the lives of the people who created them, hunted for food, revered for their strength, or perhaps even seen as spiritual guides or protectors. The diversity of these animal representations suggests that the Motsa figurines were not just limited to one specific set of beliefs, but may have been part of a larger, evolving cosmology that integrated both human and animal worlds into a unified whole. At first glance, these figures might appear to be little more than primitive art, but their placement and treatment within the archaeological record suggest a much deeper significance. They were clearly not random objects left behind by a transient people. Instead, the careful attention to detail in their creation and their deliberate grouping indicate that they were likely used for something more profound: ritualistic practices, offerings, or perhaps as part of a larger social system that involved spiritual or religious expression. Still, no single theory can fully account for the mystery of the Motsa figurines. Some researchers have suggested that they were used in ancestor worship, possibly representing the spirits of the dead, or an attempt to connect with the supernatural forces that governed life. Others argue that they may have been used for divination or shamanic practices, a way to communicate with the other world. The presence of both human and animal figures suggests that the boundaries between the earthly and the spiritual were more fluid for the people of Motsa, perhaps reflecting a belief system where humans and animals were interconnected, each playing a role in the larger cosmic order. Yet there is also the possibility that these figures were simply markers of social identity, symbols that communicated something important about the group who made them, or the individuals who owned them. Were they status symbols, used to denote power, influence, or special knowledge within the community? Or were they something more personal, representing the beliefs and fears of individual people? The mysterious positioning of the figures in the archaeological record, sometimes near hearths, sometimes in groups, suggests a deeper connection to social rituals or familial traditions, but the exact meaning remains elusive. As we reflect on the Motsa figurine assemblage, we are reminded that archaeology is often a journey into the unknown. These figures, etched in bone and ivory, hold more questions than answers. They stand as silent witnesses to a world long gone, a world in which symbolism, spirituality, and ritual were woven into the fabric of daily life. The mystery of their purpose, though tantalizing, is likely one that will remain unsolved for the foreseeable future. Perhaps, in the end, the true mystery of the Motsa figurines is not what they were meant to represent, but the fact that they continue to evoke such deep curiosity and wonder even today. We can only speculate about their meaning, but as we uncover more about the people who created them, we may inch closer to understanding the role they played in shaping the early spiritual and social landscapes of Palestine. What other mysteries remain hidden beneath the layers of time, waiting for us to uncover? The story of the Motsa figurine assemblage is far from over, and, in many ways, it has only just begun. As we transition from the enigmatic world of the Motsa figurine assemblage, we now find ourselves drawn toward a region that once stood at the crossroads of ancient civilization. The discovery of figurines at Hagar, an archaeological site nestled in the highlands of present-day Pakistan, takes us back to a time long before the emergence of the Indus Valley civilization. It is here, amid the ruins of what might have been one of the earliest settled farming communities, that some of the most intriguing early figurine variants were uncovered, objects that may hold the key to understanding the cultural and spiritual practices of the people who inhabited this mysterious world. Hagar is one of the oldest known sites of human habitation in South Asia, dating back to around 7000 BC. Situated in the arid plains of the Balochistan region, it is a place where early humans began to settle, domesticate animals, and cultivate crops, laying the foundation for the complex societies that would later flourish in the Indian subcontinent. Excavations at Hagar have revealed a wealth of artifacts, pottery, tools, beads, and more, each providing a glimpse into the daily lives of its inhabitants. But among the most captivating discoveries are the early figurines, small carvings that offer tantalizing hints at the beliefs, rituals, and social structures of these ancient people. The Hagar early figurine variants are small, mostly made from terracotta or clay, though some are crafted from stone or bone. The figurines are varied in form, with some depicting human figures, others representing animals, and still others embodying hybrid forms that blur the lines between human and animal. These figures are not merely decorative. They appear to have been deliberately shaped to represent something meaningful to their creators. The level of detail in some of the figurines suggests that they were not produced haphazardly, but were part of a larger cultural or ritualistic framework that was central to the society of Hagar. One of the most striking aspects of the Hagar figurines is the way in which they often combine human and animal features. This blending of forms raises intriguing questions about the spiritual beliefs of the people who made them. Did they see the human and animal worlds as interconnected, with figures embodying both realms? Some of the most intriguing figurines from Hagar depict hybrid creatures, beings with human bodies but animal-like heads or features. Were these representations of gods or spirits, entities that held power over the natural world and the forces that governed life? or were they more symbolic in nature, representing the duality of existence, the delicate balance between humanity and nature? In particular, the animal figures found at Mehrgar are notable. Some depict cattle, an important domesticated animal for the early settlers of the region, while others appear to show wild creatures such as deer and ibex. These animals, so integral to the daily lives of the people of Mehrgar, were likely more than just subjects of artistic representation. In many ancient cultures, animals played an important role in mythology, and their presence in the figurines suggests that the people of Mehrgar may have viewed these creatures not just as sustenance or resources, but as powerful symbols imbued with spiritual significance. Did these animals represent fertility, strength, or protection? Or were they more symbolic, acting as intermediaries between the human and divine worlds? There is also a particularly striking set of figurines that has sparked much debate among archaeologists: the so-called Mother Goddess figures. These small statuettes, which often feature exaggerated female features such as large breasts and hips, have been interpreted by some scholars as representations of fertility deities. Similar figurines, often referred to as Venus figurines, have been found at other prehistoric sites around the world, particularly in Europe and the Near East. These figures are typically associated with notions of fertility and the continuation of life, powerful symbols that may have been used in rituals to invoke divine favor for agriculture, childbirth, or the health of the community. But there is much more to these figurines than their obvious physical features. The positioning and context in which they were found suggest that the people of Mehrgar may have used these figurines in ceremonies or rituals. Many of the figurines were discovered in association with burial sites, where they may have been placed to accompany the dead or to ensure a successful journey to the afterlife. The discovery of these figurines near the remains of early farming communities hints at the possibility that these ancient peoples had developed complex belief systems long before the rise of more well-known civilizations. Yet, as with many archaeological discoveries, the mystery of the Mehrgar early figurine variants remains unresolved. There are many unanswered questions about their true purpose and significance. Were these figurines part of everyday life, or were they exclusively used for religious rituals? Were they mass-produced for trade, or were they individually crafted for personal use? And, perhaps most importantly, what did they represent to the people who created them? One possible explanation is that the figurines were used as a form of early ancestor worship. The people of Mehrgar may have believed that these figures embodied the spirits of ancestors or deities who had the power to influence the course of events in their lives. The figurines, in this context, would have served as powerful talismans, objects designed to protect the living and guide them in their journey through life. In this sense, the figurines could be seen as part of a larger spiritual practice aimed at establishing a connection with the divine or the afterlife. Another theory suggests that the figurines were tied to fertility rituals. The prominence of female figures with exaggerated sexual features may point to a belief in the power of female fertility, perhaps associated with the cycles of nature, the harvest, or childbirth. The presence of animal figures alongside these fertility symbols suggests that the people of Mehrgar may have viewed the world as an interconnected web where humans, animals, and nature all played a role in maintaining the balance of life. Despite these theories, there is still much about the Mehrgar figurines that we do not know. We may never fully understand the exact meanings and purposes of these small, seemingly simple artifacts. But that is what makes them so compelling. These figurines are not just remnants of a long-lost culture. They are windows into a world that existed thousands of years ago, a world where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual were far more fluid than we can easily comprehend. The people of Mehrgar, through their art and rituals, left behind a tangible connection to their lives, their beliefs, and their mysteries. As we reflect on the Mehrgar early figurine variants, we are reminded that the search for answers is often an unending journey. While we may never know exactly what these figures meant to the people who created them, their existence alone serves as a reminder of the complexity and depth of human history. What other mysteries remain hidden in the dust of ancient ruins, waiting to be uncovered? The figurines of Hagar may hold many secrets, but for now, they continue to invite us to explore the past, not just for answers, but for the questions they raise, questions that, perhaps, we have yet to fully ask. As we shift our focus to another intriguing site, we journey now to the rugged, mountainous heart of Central Asia, where one of the most fascinating proto-urban layouts has been uncovered. In the foothills of the Pamir Mountains, within present-day Tajikistan, lies the ancient settlement of Sarazm. This site, which dates back to around 3000 BC, holds clues to one of the earliest known urban developments, long before the rise of Mesopotamian or Indus Valley civilizations. Sarazm's layout challenges what we know about the origins of urban planning, leaving us to wonder, was this an isolated experiment in ancient city building, or a reflection of a much broader, now lost cultural evolution? Sarazm itself is situated along a vital corridor that has historically connected the Mediterranean world to the steppes of Central Asia, a place where trade, cultural exchange, and the movement of ideas would have flowed freely. The ruins of the ancient city offer a rare glimpse into a society that flourished during the Bronze Age, a civilization that, for reasons still not fully understood, seems to have been ahead of its time in terms of urban design and infrastructure. At first glance, the layout of Sarazm appears almost too organized, too methodical for a society so distant in the past. What is most striking about the settlement is its apparent understanding of city planning principles. Wide streets, clearly demarcated residential and public spaces, and the use of standardized materials in construction. In some ways, it resembles the grid-like urban layouts that would later emerge in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley. Yet, Sarazm existed centuries before these cities came into prominence. How did these people, who are considered one of the earliest agricultural societies in the region, develop such an advanced and deliberate settlement design? The site is relatively small compared to the great cities of later antiquity, but its layout is far from primitive. The streets and buildings at Sarazm suggest a highly organized social structure, one that required a central authority capable of planning and executing such a detailed urban blueprint. Houses were arranged around open courtyards, and the presence of larger public buildings implies a form of social stratification. The settlement's layout reflects a clear understanding of social dynamics and the importance of communal spaces for both domestic life and public rituals. Was this a place where early civic institutions began to take shape? Perhaps an experimental urban center that anticipated the much larger urban centers of later civilizations? Moreover, the material culture at Sarazm provides fascinating clues as to the daily life of its inhabitants. Archaeologists have uncovered a rich variety of artifacts, ranging from pottery and tools to bronze objects and jewelry. These items point to a society that engaged in long-distance trade, as evidenced by the presence of precious stones, metals, and other commodities not native to the region. Some of the most intriguing discoveries from the site are the remnants of large clay kilns used for the production of pottery. The pottery itself is both functional and decorative, bearing intricate patterns and motifs that suggest not only advanced craftsmanship, but also a cultural affinity for symbolic expression. Yet, as much as we know about Sarazm's economic and social aspects, the most enigmatic element of the site lies in its religious or ritual practices. Like many early cities, Sarazm appears to have had a deep connection to spiritual or ceremonial practices, but much of this remains speculative. The most enigmatic finds at the site are the figurines and ritual objects, items that seem to suggest a belief system tied to nature, fertility, and possibly even ancestor worship. Some of these figurines, which represent stylized human forms or animal deities, seem to suggest that the people of Sarazm had a complex spiritual life, one that perhaps mirrored the polytheistic traditions of other ancient civilizations. Were these figures used in ceremonies to invoke favor from the gods, or did they serve as guardians of the home, protecting the people from the unseen forces of the natural world? Interestingly, Sarazm's discovery and subsequent excavation have raised numerous questions about the origins of urbanization in the ancient world. Was the sophisticated planning of Sarazm an isolated development, or was it part of a wider trend in the Central Asian steppes and beyond? The influence of Sarazm seems to extend into neighboring regions, with archaeological evidence suggesting that its people were engaged in trade and cultural exchange with other ancient societies, including those in the Iranian Plateau and the Indus Valley. This leads to an intriguing possibility. Could Sarazm have been part of a larger, forgotten cultural network that spanned vast distances across Eurasia? Could it be that what we know as the first great urban civilizations were part of a much broader, interconnected world, one that we have only begun to understand? But as with many ancient sites, Sarazm presents us with more questions than answers. One of the most compelling mysteries surrounding the settlement is why it was abandoned so suddenly. Around 1500 BC, just as the city was reaching the peak of its influence and complexity, Sarazm was abandoned, and its people disappeared without a trace. Was it a natural disaster, such as an earthquake or drought, that forced the inhabitants to flee? Or was it the result of social upheaval or external invasion? Without further evidence, the reasons for the city's abandonment remain unclear, and this sudden disappearance only adds to the allure of the site. What makes Sarazm even more enigmatic is the scarcity of records or written documents. Unlike the Sumerians or Egyptians, who left behind detailed inscriptions and chronicles, the people of Sarazm did not seem to employ writing in any recognizable form. What we have instead are their physical remains, buildings, pottery, and artifacts, but little to explain the deeper meanings behind their social organization or cultural practices. The lack of written language at Sarazm places even more emphasis on the material culture, forcing archaeologists to interpret the site based on objects alone. Could it be that Sarazm represents an early, independent experiment in urban life, one that developed in isolation from other ancient civilizations? Or was it, as some scholars suggest, part of a broader trend in the development of early cities that we have yet to fully recognize? Whatever the case, the settlement of Sarazm remains one of the most remarkable mysteries of the ancient world. As we step back and reflect on what we know, and more importantly, what we don't know about Sarazm, we are reminded of how much of the ancient world remains shrouded in mystery. The site's proto-urban layout and its enigmatic abandonment leave us with a fundamental question. How much more is there to discover, buried beneath the earth, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets? Perhaps, just as Sarazm's planners once mapped their city in such deliberate detail, the future of archaeology will lead us down new paths to uncover the lost stories of ancient civilizations and the unknown truths they hold. Transitioning from the enigmatic remains of Sarazm, we turn our focus to another ancient site, one that stands in stark contrast to the sprawling urban landscapes of Central Asia. The island of Cyprus, with its sun-bleached landscapes and serene Mediterranean vistas, harbors a different kind of mystery, one that lies beneath the ground, buried deep in the sands of time. It is here, in the heart of the island, that archaeologists have uncovered the haunting remnants of the Kirokitia settlement, a Neolithic site that has baffled researchers for decades. Kirokitia, a settlement that dates back to around 7000 BC, represents one of the most significant prehistoric communities of the Mediterranean. Its carefully constructed stone houses, circular in shape, reflect a level of sophistication and planning that was once thought to be beyond the reach of early human societies. Yet, as we dig deeper into the site, we find that it is not just the buildings that make Kyrokitia extraordinary. It is the chilling and mysterious burial practices that have left scholars pondering their meaning. Upon first glance, the village of Kyrokitia appears to be a modest settlement, one of many Neolithic communities that dotted the Mediterranean region in the early days of human civilization. The houses, built from limestone and earth, are arranged in concentric circles, their round shape echoing the rhythm of time itself. The settlement's layout suggests a highly organized society, one that placed importance on both communal living and spatial harmony. There is little doubt that the people of Kyrokitia had mastered the art of building for both function and form, creating a space that was not only practical, but also reflective of their worldview. However, as is often the case with ancient sites, what lies beneath the surface holds the greatest mystery. Beneath the streets of Kyrokitia, archaeologists have unearthed a series of burial sites that defy conventional explanations. These burials, which date back to the same period as the settlement itself, have raised many more questions than they have answers. What is particularly striking about these remains is not the method of burial itself, but the unusual positioning of the bodies and the seemingly deliberate manner in which they were interred. In many of the graves at Kyrokitia, the bodies are found curled into tight, fetal positions, as though they were deliberately prepared for burial in a manner that reflects both reverence and ritual. This practice, while not entirely unique to the Neolithic period, is particularly notable at Kyrokitia due to its apparent consistency across multiple burial sites. However, what sets these graves apart is the way in which some of the bodies were buried with unusual grave goods, items that suggest a cultural practice at once familiar and foreign. These items include ornamental beads, pottery, and tools, but more strikingly, the bodies were sometimes accompanied by stones, animal remains, and even entire skulls, a feature that is far from typical for burials of this time. What does this combination of items and placement suggest? Are these offerings to the deceased meant to ensure a safe passage to the afterlife, or do they represent something more complex, perhaps an attempt to communicate with the spirits or to invoke ancestral protection? The unusual presence of skulls alongside the bodies is particularly perplexing. In some cases, the skulls appear to have been carefully removed and placed alongside the skeletons, almost as if they were being honored or symbolically preserved for some form of ritual. Could this practice have been tied to an early belief in the sanctity of the head, perhaps as a locus of the soul or spirit? These burial practices suggest that the people of Kyrokitia may have held complex spiritual beliefs, ideas that extended far beyond the mere concept of death as an end. Instead, the burial rituals seem to point to an understanding of death as a transition, a passage into another realm where the deceased could interact with the living or act as guardians for the community. The skulls, in particular, might represent ancestors who were thought to have continued influence over the living, guiding and protecting them from beyond the grave. In this sense, Kyrokitia's burial practices align with other ancient cultures that practiced ancestor worship, a widespread belief that the dead remained actively involved in the lives of the living, particularly in the context of agricultural or community-based rituals. Yet, while these burial practices fit within known patterns of early Neolithic spirituality, there are elements that defy easy explanation. The ritualistic placement of certain grave goods, particularly those associated with fertility or strength, seems to indicate that the people of Kyrokitia may have viewed death not just as a spiritual passage, but also as an important social event. Some of the artifacts buried with the dead are suggestive of fertility rites, objects that hint at the community's ongoing relationship with nature and their reverence for the forces that governed life and death. Were these grave goods intended to ensure the deceased's continued participation in the cycles of life, or were they meant to aid the living in honoring the spirits? The burial practices at Kyrokitia have prompted some archaeologists to suggest that these people may have had an unusual approach to death, one that involved a deeper connection to the ancestors than was common in other Neolithic cultures. This theory is supported by the fact that Kyrokitia appears to have been a highly organized community with a strong social structure. The settlement's layout and the care taken in the construction of the houses suggest a society that was not only advanced in its understanding of architecture and urban planning, but also deeply invested in the relationship between the living and the dead. However, despite these speculative ideas, the full meaning of the Kyrokitia burial practices remains elusive. Could it be that these practices were part of a larger, now lost tradition of ritual burial that stretched across the Mediterranean and beyond? Some researchers have suggested that Kyrokitia might have been part of a network of Neolithic communities linked by shared religious practices, but there is little direct evidence to confirm this. The similarities in burial practices across early Neolithic sites, coupled with the presence of ritual artifacts, suggest that the people of Kyrokitia were part of a broader cultural or spiritual movement, one whose full scope we may never fully understand. Even more puzzling is the fact that, despite the apparent significance of these burial practices, the people of Kyrokitia left behind few written records or detailed accounts of their beliefs. What we have instead are the physical remains, the skeletal evidence, and the occasional grave goods, artifacts that tell a story, but only in fragments. What might we be missing? Could there be more to uncover beneath the ground, hidden in unexcavated areas of the site? Or could the answers lie in ancient texts or oral traditions that have since been lost to time? The burial practices at Kyrokitia remain one of the most perplexing aspects of this ancient settlement. The unusual positioning of the bodies, the presence of skulls and ritual artifacts, and the apparent reverence shown for the dead all suggest that the people of Kyrokitia possessed a sophisticated spiritual worldview, one that transcended mere survival and aimed at understanding the deeper forces of life and death. But the true meaning of these practices, what they reveal about the Kyrokitia people's beliefs, their view of death, and their relationship with the divine, remains an enigma awaiting further exploration. As we ponder these mysteries, we are left to wonder, what other lost practices, beliefs, and rituals might still be buried in the sands of time, waiting to be uncovered? And perhaps, more intriguingly, what might we learn about ourselves by continuing to unravel the secrets of the ancient world? As we leave behind the enigmatic burial practices of Kyrokitia, we now journey into the heart of Eastern Europe, to a place where the past whispers through the layers of time, and the earth itself seems to carry the weight of forgotten secrets. Our destination, the Tartaria Pit complex in Romania, a site that has captured the imagination of archaeologists and historians for decades. It is here, in the rolling hills of the Alba County, that an extraordinary discovery has perplexed researchers and challenged our understanding of early human civilization. Beneath the soil, an ancient complex, with its symbolic carvings and cryptic remains, promises to reveal an ancient chapter of history, one that may have been deliberately obscured for millennia. The Tartaria Pit complex was uncovered in the early 20th century, near the village of Tartaria, on the banks of the Mureș River. What began as an excavation of a seemingly ordinary Neolithic settlement has evolved into one of the most puzzling archaeological discoveries in Romania. The site, initially thought to be a typical settlement, soon revealed a treasure trove of artifacts and human remains that would leave even the most seasoned archaeologist in awe. But it is the context of these finds, particularly the pit complex itself, that has led to ongoing debate about the true nature of Tartaria. The discovery that would forever change our understanding of the site was made in 1961, when a team of archaeologists uncovered 3 small clay tablets, each bearing a series of incised symbols that would become the focal point of much scholarly debate. These tablets, now known as the Tartaria tablets, are unlike anything else found in the region, or indeed, the entire world. Their markings bear a striking resemblance to the Vinca symbols of the Balkans, a complex system of pictograms found across parts of the former Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and Romania, and dating back to the 6th millennium BC. The Tartaria tablets have been the subject of intense scrutiny, as their symbols suggest the possibility of a written language, one that predates the earliest known examples of writing in Mesopotamia by thousands of years. Some scholars argue that the markings represent a form of proto-writing, a precursor to the cuneiform script that would later emerge in Sumer. Others believe that the symbols are purely symbolic or ritualistic in nature, rather than linguistic. The mystery surrounding the tablets is compounded by the fact that they were found in a context that remains difficult to interpret. The Tartaria pit complex itself consists of a series of pits, some of which contained human remains, others that held the distinctive clay tablets. The positioning of the tablets, along with the artifacts found in the pits, suggests that this was a place of ritualistic significance. Many of the human remains found at the site were buried in unusual positions, sometimes with artifacts placed deliberately alongside them, as if to mark the deceased's status in the afterlife. These burials, paired with the presence of the symbolic tablets, indicate that the people who lived at Tartaria were deeply involved in spiritual or ritual practices, perhaps practices tied to a system of beliefs that we can only begin to fathom. The presence of the Tartaria tablets in a burial context has led some to speculate that these early symbols were used for religious or ceremonial purposes, potentially tied to the worship of ancestors or natural forces. Could these tablets represent some form of divine communication, a way to communicate with gods or spirits? Or perhaps they were used as part of an early form of record-keeping, a rudimentary system of documentation meant to preserve important information, such as genealogies or agricultural knowledge. Whatever their true purpose, the tablets remain one of the most tantalizing aspects of the Tartaria site, pointing toward an advanced level of intellectual and spiritual sophistication in a society that, at the time, was considered relatively primitive by many scholars. As with many ancient sites, the presence of such objects raises more questions than it answers. What did the symbols on the Tartaria tablets actually mean? Why were they buried with the dead? And what, if anything, does this suggest about the existence of a proto-writing system in southeastern Europe long before the rise of Mesopotamian civilization? Some researchers believe that the Tartaria symbols could represent an early form of writing, not unlike the ancient script of the Indus Valley or the Elamites, which emerged independently of Mesopotamian influences. Others, however, have questioned whether the Tartaria symbols truly represent writing at all, positing that they are more likely to be symbolic marks or part of a ritualistic tradition. The Tartaria site also includes other intriguing artifacts, such as clay figurines, carved stones, and a variety of pottery, all of which exhibit distinctive markings and motifs that suggest a culture deeply engaged with symbolism. These objects are not merely decorative, they are imbued with meaning, suggesting that the people of Tartaria had a complex belief system that extended beyond the material world and into the realm of the sacred. But who were these people? What language did they speak? What kind of social structure did they have? And, most intriguingly, where did they fit within the broader framework of Neolithic Europe? Some archaeologists have even proposed that Tartaria may have been part of a larger, unknown cultural network, one that connected the peoples of the Balkans, Anatolia, and the Levant. Could it be that the Tartaria people were part of a proto-civilization that preceded the more well-known cultures of the ancient world? Were the symbolic practices at Tartaria part of a larger, regional belief system, one that was shared across vast distances? Or was Tartaria a unique outpost, isolated from the larger currents of ancient culture, developing its own language, its own symbols, and its own ideas about life and death? The mysteries surrounding the Tartaria pit complex are not easily answered. The site itself presents a fascinating juxtaposition of human remains, ritualistic artifacts, and symbolic markings that point toward an advanced level of societal organization, one that seems to blur the lines between the Neolithic period and the dawn of writing. But the full significance of the Tartaria site remains elusive. Despite years of excavation and analysis, we are still left with more questions than answers. Why were these tablets buried with the dead? What did the symbols mean, and how were they used? Did the people of Tartaria possess a written language, or were they engaging in some form of proto-writing that we have yet to understand? And perhaps most importantly, what does the existence of Tartaria tell us about the rise of human civilization itself? In the end, Tartaria may not provide immediate answers, but it offers a glimpse into a world that existed long before the rise of the great ancient civilizations of the Near East and Europe. The Tartaria pit complex, with its symbolic tablets and enigmatic burial practices, reminds us that the story of humanity's past is far more complex and mysterious than we might ever fully comprehend. Perhaps, buried beneath the earth, there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered, waiting for us to decipher their meaning. The Tartaria site, in all its mystery, remains an invitation to explore the ancient world and the elusive minds of those who lived so long ago. As we leave behind the enigmatic remains of Tartaria, we now shift our focus to the shores of southern Italy, where a different mystery beckons. One that intertwines with the ancient rhythms of the Mediterranean, yet is as shrouded in secrecy as any hidden treasure. Welcome to Notarchirico, a site that, although less well known than some of its counterparts, holds within its boundaries an archaeological puzzle that may shift our understanding of early human behavior in unexpected ways. The Notarchirico site is located in the Gulf of Taranto, in the region of Apulia, and dates back to the Upper Paleolithic period, roughly 20,000 to 25,000 years ago. Here, amidst the expansive limestone plains, an extraordinary discovery was made that would bring the site into the spotlight of archaeological investigation: the engraved bones of a long-forgotten civilization. Unearthed in 1990, these bones would prompt a re-evaluation of the symbolic and artistic capabilities of the people who lived in this remote corner of prehistoric Europe. At first glance, the bones themselves are nothing remarkable, simply the remains of animals, seemingly scattered in the dirt of an ancient habitation site. But upon closer inspection, something extraordinary becomes apparent. Many of these bones are not ordinary remains. They have been carefully engraved with intricate symbols, lines, and geometric patterns, markings that, on the surface, appear to be purposeful, deliberate, and highly significant. These were not the hastily drawn doodles of a disorganized society. These were symbols etched with intention, skill, and forethought. Some of the engraved bones bear simple, repetitive lines, while others feature more complex and abstract motifs. Among the most intriguing are what appear to be representations of abstract animals, perhaps drawn as part of a spiritual or totemic belief system. Other markings seem to suggest an understanding of astronomy or a connection to the celestial movements of the time, an early acknowledgement of the cosmos that predates many of the known ancient cultures of the Near East. But as with many archaeological discoveries, these bones have raised more questions than they have answered. One of the most perplexing aspects of the Notarchirico engraved bones is the lack of context. The bones were found scattered across the site, rather than in any clear, organized pattern. They were not placed in ceremonial graves, nor were they found in association with large, complex artifacts. In fact, many of the bones appear to have been discarded after being carefully marked, suggesting that they were not just used as tools or objects of daily life, but rather as symbols, perhaps with a meaning lost to time. This ambiguity has led to various interpretations of the markings. Some scholars believe that these engravings represent the earliest known examples of symbolic thought, the use of marks to convey meaning, an important step toward the development of language and writing. Could it be that the people of Notarkiriko were the first to use symbolic representation in their daily lives, marking bones as a way to communicate with each other or with the spiritual realm? If so, could these early symbols represent some kind of proto-writing, a precursor to the written languages that would emerge millennia later in places like Mesopotamia and Egypt? Another theory suggests that the markings on the bones could have been used as part of an early form of record-keeping, perhaps to track important events, seasonal cycles, or migratory patterns. The idea of using bones to record time or memory is not entirely far-fetched. Many ancient cultures have used marks on stone or bone as a way of documenting significant events, and it is possible that the people of Notarkiriko used these engraved bones as an early form of chronicle. But there is another, more speculative theory that looms over the interpretation of the bones: the possibility that the engravings were tied to the belief systems of these ancient people. Could the markings be ritualistic in nature, intended to invoke or honor certain deities or forces of nature? Could the people of Notarkiriko have been performing early forms of shamanistic practices, using these bones as part of their spiritual or ceremonial rites? Some of the patterns resemble motifs seen in later Neolithic and Bronze Age societies, suggesting a continuity of thought that stretches beyond the Paleolithic period. If this is the case, it would indicate that early humans were not simply passive observers of their environment, but were actively engaging with it in ways that we are only beginning to understand. Yet the true meaning of the Notarkiriko bones remains elusive. Despite the numerous interpretations and hypotheses, no one can say for certain what these markings represent. Were they an early form of writing? Were they ritual objects, or perhaps early tools used for some kind of ceremonial purpose? Or were they simply the product of human creativity, marks made on bones for reasons that only the people of Notarkiriko could understand? In many ways, the Notarkiriko engraved bones are a mirror of the broader mystery of early human cognition and culture. What were the cognitive abilities of these ancient people? What did they believe, and how did they express those beliefs? The bones suggest a people who were capable of abstract thought, of creating symbols that conveyed meaning, and perhaps even of recording the passage of time in ways that we have only begun to understand. Yet, like so many other mysteries of the ancient world, the true significance of these bones is lost to us, buried under millennia of history. As with many archaeological discoveries, the Notarkiriko bones have led to as many questions as answers. Could these markings represent the dawn of human symbolic expression, an early forerunner of writing? Were the people of Notarkiriko using these bones to communicate with the divine, or were they simply recording the rhythms of the natural world around them? What role did these markings play in their society? Were they part of a larger cultural or ritualistic framework? Or were they the work of isolated individuals, driven by their own unique vision? In the end, the true meaning of the Notarkiriko engraved bones may never be fully understood. They are a reminder of how much we still have to learn about our ancient past, and of how much mystery remains hidden beneath the surface of the earth. But perhaps, in their ambiguity, these markings tell us something important about early human thought: the recognition of patterns, the search for meaning, and the attempt to communicate with something greater than oneself. The markings on the bones may have been lost to time, but they continue to spark our curiosity, urging us to look deeper into the past, to decipher the codes of a long-forgotten civilization, and perhaps, in time, we will uncover the stories they were meant to tell. As we look closer at the materials used to make these engravings, another question emerges. How did the people of Notarkiriko create these marks with such precision? The bones themselves were not necessarily soft or malleable. Some were quite dense, likely requiring specialized tools or methods to carve into them. Was this evidence of early tool use beyond the simple tasks of hunting and gathering? The markings might imply that the people were capable of crafting not only functional tools, but also ones suited for more artistic and symbolic purposes. The fact that these engravings were made with such careful attention to detail suggests a level of sophistication in their craftsmanship, one that deserves deeper exploration. Another intriguing possibility arises when we examine the specific bones used. Could these animals have had specific significance to the people of Notarkiriko? Some researchers argue that the choice of animal bones might not have been incidental. The idea that certain animals could hold symbolic or spiritual importance is a common thread across many ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Celts. If this was true for the people of Notarkiriko, what did these specific animals represent? Were they linked to local myths, totemic beliefs, or perhaps even seasonal cycles that influenced human activity and ritual? The context of the site itself also raises interesting questions. While the bones were found scattered across the site, there were no large-scale evidence of monumental structures or clearly defined burial practices, which is often the case with many other Paleolithic or Mesolithic sites. What, then, was the function of the Notarkiriko settlement? Was it a place of temporary habitation, where early humans stopped to rest or engage in specific rituals, or was it an established community with long-term practices that we have yet to fully uncover? The lack of evidence for permanent structures doesn't mean the community was transient, but it does suggest that their way of life and cultural expressions may have been quite different from those of other contemporary populations. Finally, we must also consider the broader implications of the Notarkiriko discovery. If these bones represent the earliest known form of symbolic expression in Europe, how does this change our understanding of human development? Were the people of Notarkiriko in communication with other prehistoric groups across Europe or the Near East, exchanging knowledge or cultural practices? Could the markings on these bones be evidence of a cultural cross-pollination that would reshape the trajectory of human evolution and cognition? It's possible that we are only beginning to understand the intricate web of connections that linked disparate human groups long before the dawn of written history.